coming here on short notice. I stand here tonight to simply report that the Maine State Police have located the body of Robert Card in Lisbon. He is dead. I've called President Biden to inform him about this news. I've informed Senator King, Senator Collins, Representative Pingree, and Representative Golden. Commissioner Sawchuk will describe the circumstances of that discovery in some detail in a few moments. But this discovery is entirely thanks to the hundreds of local, county, state, and federal law enforcement members from all over and people from other.
Hey guys, to guys that are coming in. So this is the live press conference. Robert Card has been found deceased. So they're just announcing it here. This is the mass shooter in Maine. Natasha and I have been speaking about this a lot over the last few days. Natasha's not feeling great, so I thought I'd cover this here tonight.
States as well. People who searched tirelessly to arrive at this moment. And on behalf of all Maine people, I want to express my profound gratitude for their unwavering bravery and determination and fortitude, and for the leadership of Lewiston Police Chief St. Where'd he go? Right there, that guy. Lewiston's Police Chief St. Pierre. Like many people, I'm breathing a sigh of relief tonight, knowing that Robert Card is no longer a threat to anyone. I know there are some people, and many people, who share that sentiment, but I also know that his death may not bring solace to many. But now is a time to heal. And with this search concluded, I know that law enforcement continues to fully investigate all the facts so we can bring what closure we can to the victims and their families. And I ask that all Maine people continue to keep those families and all of the people impacted by this tragedy in their thoughts and prayers. Lewiston is a special place. This isn't us. Lewiston is a great place. It's a close-knit community of fine people, people with a long history, a history of hard work, of persistence, of faith, of opening its big heart to people everywhere. And tonight, the city of Lewiston and the state of Maine begin to move forward on what will be a long and difficult road to healing, but we will heal together. Thank you. And again, my deepest gratitude of all the people of the state of Maine, to these wonderful members of law enforcement who came from all over to help us solve this crime and put closure on this investigation. Robert Card is dead. Now I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Sawchuk.
Thank you very much, Governor. We truly do appreciate all of your support. I think it's incredibly important that the next person that speaks this evening is Lewiston's chief law enforcement champion, and that is Dave St. Pierre. Dave.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Governor, for.
I think I heard that the lady you can see there giving the sign language is local and was a classmate of some of the victims in this, apparently.
For allowing me this opportunity. Bear with me, please. I certainly did not have much time to prepare a speech here. I want to say to everybody, thank you so much. Our community can now breathe a sigh of relief, as the governor stated, and I can't echo that enough. Our work, again, is not done here. I was very elated tonight when I got the call from Commissioner Sawchuk advising me of the revelation of what took place and that Mr. Card is deceased and no longer a threat to our community or any other community. I just don't want to forget the families that are grieving and will continue to grieve. I don't want to forget the law enforcement officials that have worked tirelessly throughout this whole event to come to a good conclusion. Our men and women of the Lewiston Police Department, of all of our surrounding agencies. We have with us Chief McGee here from Lisbon, where Mr. Card was found. This is vitally important to all of us that this conclusion came to light tonight. We're gonna grieve for the families that lost loved ones here. We're gonna continue to work. We're gonna persevere. And we become better people for it is in terms of working together as teams. We've learned a lot from some mistakes. We've won a lot of accomplishments this evening. Again, I wasn't really prepared for this on a Friday night at 10:30, but I'm very happy to be here and very happy to say the threat is over. Thank you. Sure. So our officers are being notified now as we speak. Some know obviously sooner than others. There are many that are still home. They're home with their families. And I'm quite certain at this point in time, we all know about this. This is something that all of our law enforcement personnel, ours and any surrounding community, has been paying very close attention to in awaiting positive news or good news. And this is by far the best news we've had in quite some time.
Was there any belief at this time that the suspect was dead before finding him, or did this come as a brand new revelation that you never saw coming before this?
So our reality here is that the search has been extensive. It's been thorough. It's been nonstop since the minute we started speaking with you and long before that. So all of these options are on the table, as we knew. We continue to search locations, in some cases multiple times. And we will have more information about exactly how this went down. We're going to have another briefing tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And I would please encourage you to think about next steps from your end, information that you would find important. And I will say that this is not going to be a long Q&A this evening. We wanted to make sure that we got this information out as fast as possible and as responsible as possible. And what I mean by that is that the time between the notification of the press release and now, there wasn't a lot of details there. There wasn't a lot of details there because we wanted to talk to the victims' families. We wanted to say, this is coming. It's important that they heard that information as close to first as anybody else. And you know who else we called was the family of the suspect. And they lost a loved one in this scenario. And there were many of that family that was very cooperative with us throughout. So they deserve that phone call. So we had those conversations tonight before joining you here. We also got a chance to spend some time with the brothers and sisters of law enforcement and our public safety partners that have been so incredibly helpful over the last few days, to say the least. So, one second. So right here, sir.
Where exactly did you find him and when exactly did you find him?
So at 7:45 this evening is when Mr. Card was located. I won't give you an exact address. It was near the river along Androscoggin in Lisbon Falls was the actual location. Ma'am, did you have a question? Ma'am, did you have a question?
When do you think he died?
That all remains to be seen, right? So our reality is that we found that body at 7:45 and it's 10:25 now. So there continues to be a lot of work that needs to be done here at the scene with the medical examiner's office. So there's a much more follow-up to what happened. But sir, did you have a question?
Any indication that he had an accomplice and how was he found?
I won't be able to answer either one of those questions at this point. Accomplices and things of that nature, we've had no indication of that since the very beginning. But as we've talked about before, these next steps are going to gives us an opportunity to do things as fast as we can in the sense that we want to provide closure and information, but also slow things down a little bit because we need to look at video evidence. We need to look at the various pieces of technology that are in play here in hopes that that gives us some additional information around some of the things that you're going to be concerned about. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm happy to take a look at that information in hopes that I can get that back to you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. That remains to be seen. Again, we have attorney generals that we need to work with and other individuals that are in play here. I'm going to take a couple more questions again with the mindset that it's 10 o'clock tonight, and we do want to come back tomorrow morning to have this conversation right here.
So by this afternoon, were you just looking for remains, or how did you make that decision to lift the shelter in place?
Yeah, sure. So I think that that was an ongoing conversation since the minute we actually put that in place. We knew that that was an important decision. Certainly from our perspective, it made complete sense to put that order in place immediately based on the violent nature and the traumatic nature of these crimes. And as things progressed over the next few days, since Wednesday to now, we've had a lot of conversations with various town and city leadership, with the governor's office, with Chief St. Pierre, with business owners, with residents. And we have to have that balancing act of pluses and minuses. And we had that initial surge with those communities, and those communities made perfect sense for an order. And as things tended to slow down, we didn't have any immediate threats. We made the decision to back off that. I would also just want to mention this because a fellow commissioner had asked me to do this, and I could walk out of here before forgetting it. But Commissioner Camuso said that and passed along that actually that hunting restriction has been lifted as well. So the resident hunting opportunity for tomorrow is open across the state of Maine to include those 4 communities. There's a lot of phone calls that she would receive around that. But right here, ma'am. Yes, I can confirm that. It's an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Did you have a question, ma'am?
You searched that area before, as I understand it. Can you explain why he was on the job this other time that you searched this area?
I didn't state that we had searched that area before. So
Our reporting says that you searched this area before.
okay. As we have stated in the past, we try to use information that we can confirm one way or the other. So your reporting can say something one way or the other, and that's fine. We can talk about that again tomorrow morning. But I think we're done taking questions for this evening. Thank you very much for your patience, and we will see you soon. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's go.
All right, the police commissioner there is Public Safety Commissioner Mike Soschuk confirming what we had already known, that Robert Card's body had been found. A new piece of information, his body was found at 7:45 this evening, and he did confirm that he was found dead from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound.
We do want to let you know that in just about a minute now, we are wrapping up our coverage here on Maine CW. Our coverage will continue over on Channel 8. So if you'd like to stay with us and you're watching on Maine CW, we will continue our coverage here over on WFTW Channel 8 here this evening. But as we get back to our coverage here tonight, some of the major headlines of this coming to light, really the reaction from Governor Mills. And as far as the details released by Commissioner Soschuk, not a whole lot more details than what we already knew. He said tomorrow they'll get into some of those details that everybody's looking for. Did confirm Lisbon Falls is where the body was found.
They themselves are dealing with the loss of someone tonight, so some complicated emotions there. Again, if you're just joining us here on the air, we have learned that the shooter in that Lewiston shooting that killed 18 people, injured 13 others, has been found dead in Lisbon. News Center Maine's Alex Haskell was there on that scene. I'm not sure if Alex is ready to talk to us, but it would be great to get an idea of what is going on there. Alex? All right, looks like we don't have Alex's audio right now. We will work on that and get back to him.
We will. Oh, here we go. We have Alex now.
Hey guys, sorry about that. So yeah, we are in Lisbon Falls. Right behind me here, that's Capitol Ave, and that's where Main Recycling is, and that's where Robert Card's body was found. That road is blocked off right now. We have 2 members of law enforcement with Lisbon Police there, and this is a busy area, and we've seen it get busier as the news has gotten out that this is where Robert Card's body has been found. We are right by a McDonald's right in front of me here, and we've seen people take a break from their meals to look out the windows to see what's happening, and it's quite the sight as all news media comes here to check out this site. We've seen a couple vehicles pull out of Capitol Ave and head out, but other than that, there's not too much happening. Another development is that there's a helicopter here, but it's just been circling around. Other than that, it's been pretty quiet here, but it is Capitol Ave behind us on the busy stretch of Lisbon Street. Much different from where we were yesterday in a rural part of Maine in Bowden that we've been talking about, there was a home there where law enforcement thought Robert Cards was. Obviously that turned out not to be true. He was here at Main Recycling where he was found with self-inflicted gun wound. And I typed it into my phone. We are about 2 minutes from a boat launch, and that's where authorities have been spending much of their time getting into the Androscoggin River searching for Robert Card. But I was looking on my phone, and Capitol Ave behind me, it goes down about half a mile, and that's where Main Recycling is, and it's very close to the Androscoggin River. So all kind of connected here, but that is what's happening here right now, guys.
Alex Haskell live for us there in Lisbon Falls. Thank you, Alex. And he mentioned, the residence that they were at in Bowden, police executing search warrants on a couple of residences out there. And we do know, they told us this morning that they found a note in one of those homes. And so you can bet over the coming days, there will probably be more information that we learn as this investigation continues.
Yes, because there are a lot of emotions for not only the families of the victims, but the family of law enforcement, of healthcare professionals, of really everyone in this state tonight. And the question remains why. And I think people are going to be asking that for some time. So if you take a look at this map here, Alex referenced just how close it is. You can see in the center of your screen, that's the Main Recycling Corporation, the company where Senator Angus King telling us that Card used to work just about a couple minutes drive from where his car, that white Subaru, was found at the boat ramp, and where earlier today they were combing the river for what police had worded as quote unquote bodies, and didn't find anything there, but ultimately just hours later found Card's body at that recycling center. And also I want to point out not only the proximity to that boat launch, but how far away from the original scene. We're talking about 12 miles away.
You can kind of see too here on the map between Car Found and Main Recycling Corporation. Police have mentioned there is a walkway, sort of like a walking path along the water there.
I also believe Brooke Griffin is with us. She is also in Lisbon tonight with a kind of a different perspective from where we just saw Alex Haskell. Brooke, what can you share with us about what is happening on your part of the scene tonight?
Yeah, so this area has actually gotten pretty busy. This is right at the McDonald's. I can actually see Alex from where I am now, but we're on the other side. We can show you a little bit further down into that scene. Actually, look, there are some police going in right now. We've seen them with their lights on moving down to that area. That's much, much closer to that scene. We're not exactly right where they supposedly found Robert Card's body around 7:45 this evening. That is a little bit further down. So you can see that there are a lot of police here. There's lights, there's no sirens, there's no really sense of urgency or anything imminent happening right now. That's not been the case in different times throughout the past couple of days. Obviously, last night there in Bowden, very imminent. There were Bearcats, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of law enforcement officers at that scene. This one is a little bit different. There's actually another police officer about to come by here. He's been here for a few minutes now at this point. So it's active. It's a lot going on here, but it's not as urgent or as persistent as it has been over the past 48, 50 hours or so. Now, one thing I do want to mention is we're here at the McDonald's on Lisbon Street in Lisbon Falls. Now, there's actually a lot of onlookers that are in this parking lot. I don't know if we can actually turn around at this point. We're going to try. These are not all news people. These are just random citizens here to look and see what's going on. And this is something that has been horrifying for this community. We've shown you it. We're feeling it. We've talked to these people. There's a lot of emotions running as these people are finding out that the person that put such horror on their community is now dead. So there are people here. They've gotten McDonald's. They've gone through the drive-through. They're just standing here watching the media, watching the police, this helicopter circling overhead right now. One thing I do also want to mention, a lot of strong words made in that presser. Now, we are still waiting to hear the details on how exactly Robert Card was found, where exactly he was found at this point. That's something that we're going to find hopefully at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. We actually, as reporters, were told to, quote, have your questions ready whenever we arrive tomorrow morning so that everything is organized and structured. That's been a big thing for those Lewiston and state leaders as of about 10 o'clock this morning. They've been trying to promote structure amongst the chaos that's been going on. But I want to tell you, if you missed the beginning of that press conference, exactly how Governor Janet Mills started that press conference. She started with, quote, Robert Card is dead. They got right to it. That was the information that we've been waiting to hear for days, happening apparently right down the street at that main recycling center area that he may have worked at one point. So this is a sigh of relief. A lot of reporters, even whenever I was looking around, it looked like everyone kind of looked around, to see how people were reacting. This is a big deal. It's a much different mood than it was even a few hours ago here in this exact spot whenever I was here earlier. And it's going to be a different spot, I'm sure, developing over the next 12 or so hours.
Griffin, live for us tonight. Thank you, Brooke.
Okay, so there you have it. He was found deceased at 7:45, self-inflicted gunshot. We don't know how long he was there, deceased though. Let me just bring up the map, just to show you, because it's very close by the location where he had parked his car, where some of us thought he may have departed on a boat. Last we heard, his boat was unaccounted for. Obviously, he wasn't on that. Okay. So his car was found here on the same evening, a couple of hours after the shootings, parked in here. And if you look down here, that looks to be the boat ramp. It would only be very small boats that could get out there onto the river though, because that's quite a low bridge over there. But anyway, so just further down Lisbon Street, or Lisbon Street down here, is main recycling. And he apparently used to work here, we're hearing. We didn't know that until now. So he was found somewhere behind one of these buildings. And just to zoom out and put everything in perspective, along to the west here, so we're just down here, along to the west here, in Lewiston is where the shootings took place. Downtown. Up here to the north is the bowling center here. And I think it's 4 miles down to the south is the Bar and Grill over here. And as I was pointing out on Natasha's, I don't think this was a random shooting spree. If you look at the pictures of the actual bar, It's not. It doesn't look like the kind of place that you would randomly select, right? I think he went there for a particular reason. I've heard rumors that he was going there looking for his ex. I don't know if it's an ex-girlfriend or ex-wife, but they're just rumors. But I think one thing is most likely is that he wasn't picking these targets randomly. So if he didn't pick this one randomly, then I doubt he picked the bowling center randomly. This is a more recent image of Robert Carr. Well, a more recently released picture. And then you got this one here, a bit more detailed. So
It could have been random. I mean, unless and again, I'm just so everybody else knows, I have barely been scratching the surface on knowing what's been going on with this. I've been just buried all week long, but I'm trying to say, because I see Tracy talking about like he was either institutionalized or he was under some sort of mental care.
only for 2 weeks.
Well, okay, but when you're talking about mental illness and what drives them, I mean, if it's the girlfriend thing, but what may not, it may have been random. It may have been for mass effect, right? If the bowling alley's busy, if the pub is busy, it could, just like when some people go into McDonald's, they just do it for mass effect. Is all I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah. Think about the reason I'm saying it though, right? Is look where the bowling alley is, right? Up here to the north. Right.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of other places there, right? But he drives 4 miles down here, passing all these other places, right? And then there's got to have been many places where there was
Yeah.
members of the public congregating, right? And then he comes down here and he gets to this bar and grill down here. But did you see the pictures that I put up of the bar and grill? I'll show you here. This is the bar. That's it there, the bar and grill.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't look like a bar, does it? From when you're driving past.
Yeah, but if
And
you
that's
live in that
from the other angle.
what's in there, right? Lola
Yeah.
says witnesses are saying that he was aiming his gun, not just spraying the crowd. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, we heard there were some witness interviews I've seen today where they were describing the way he was shooting as being quite deliberate, and he had a laser on his rifle as well. But to me, yeah, I hear what you're saying, right? That he would be local, so he would know that this obviously would be people in here. So it's possible that it's random. I just think
it's
there's a good
probably
argument.
not playing devil's advocate. London says, has anyone addressed those killed at the bowling alley? If kids. There was a news report that said 14 to 76 or something like that.
Yeah, there was only one kid. There was one 14 years of age. All the other victims were adults. I don't know if the 14-year-old was at the. You got to assume he was at the bowling as opposed to the bar, right? But you don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, again, I don't know if it's like a bar or if it's like a bar with a restaurant or something. I don't know.
Yeah. So just to give you an idea of the bar, it had a lot of billiard tables and a lot of dartboards. So that's the particular bar and grill. Looks fairly large inside, right? That's the outside again. And just to give it a little bit more perspective, so the searches were going on near where he stayed, which was in Bowden over here. They even searched at one point as far north as Monmouth at one point. I think it was the second day. Then up here. And then somewhere down on Meadow Road, this was yesterday, where they descended outside a property. I think it was possibly a relative's property. They seemed convinced that he was inside there. They were there with their megaphones and whatnot. I think they had earlier found a note that he'd left for his son. It's been described through some news reports as being a suicide note, but I've heard people say that it maybe wasn't, but looks like it was now, right? But it was given instructions to his son regarding his bank accounts, apparently, and they found his phone there as well. Found his phone. So that was at the place that he was staying, which I think was a little further north here, and then later on they came down to possibly a relative's home on Meadow Road, but he wasn't there. And you can see there it's a good few miles north of where he had left his car on the evening of the shootings, and he was possibly there at the recycling facility for quite some time, possibly a couple of days, maybe. Don't know. Yeah, Larney, he left a note. There are rumors that he was looking for his ex. And then there's rumors that he apparently had broken up with his ex or ex-wife relatively recently.
Lorraine,
so as is always...
Lorraine asked, was it true that 4 other people were found yesterday, or is that just a rumor? That's what I'm wondering, because the last that I heard, the death toll was at 22. Was that just misinformation?
Yeah, that was misinformation to begin with. They were reporting 22 on the actual evening, and then the press conference the following day confirmed it was 18, and there's 13 injured. There was rumors that there was bodies found the following day. There was indications of that from a scanner, but nothing came of it. Nothing came of it, so...
Yeah, I think the autopsy will be interesting to see how long he has been dead.
Mm.
Did he go back to that place and do it? And somebody mentioned earlier, like, did anybody hear a shot? Because that little bit that we just heard in that news conference, they suspended all the hunting in that area, the hunting licenses and stuff like that. So I'm assuming that, you know, hearing gunshots during hunting season is probably something that they're kind of used to. But if they had suspended all that, then if you heard a gunshot, that would probably stick out in your mind, maybe.
Yeah, there was a farm that they were getting reports of gunshots from earlier, just up the road to the west there earlier, and it turned out to be just what you're suggesting, you know, just like a farmer using his rifle.
Mm-hmm.
So this is us on the ground here at the location of the recycling plant.
Yes, Ivy, I agree 100%. Ivy says, At least he is found, and that part is over because everyone must have been terrified. Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't even imagine. Rosebud's asking how far from his car was he found? It didn't look very far. What, a mile or two, maybe?
It looked to me about a 5-minute walk. Let me just zoom out and get myself located here.
He was hearing
So,
impaired?
yeah, he had recently got a hearing aid, and he
Okay.
was telling people he could hear voices. And apparently he had threatened to shoot up the army barracks that he was at. And his family and friends, I think, had reported him out of concern. And hence he ended up spending 2 weeks in a somewhere for mental illness help.
Being
Yeah.
evaluated. Yeah.
So, as you can imagine, there's been all these questions asked about, you know, should he have been able to have guns, right, if he was undergoing that treatment. And you've probably heard them talking about the phrase the yellow flag system, which I'm not too sure if this is just something within Maine or not, but it's a system whereby it's a way of keeping track if someone missteps and a flag is put upon their name, and so that if they're looking to get a hold of weapons, then this would flag up. There was some of the journalists were asking questions about that during the press conference earlier before they found him deceased. But everyone knows, regardless of that, this guy was in the military for 20 odd years. There is no way they would be able to, even if there were some kind of flag whereby he would be forced to hand in weapons, there's no way he wouldn't be able to get either his hands on weapons or have kept some weapons, you know? So, but yeah, so this is that's where he had left his vehicle, just here, and it's about a 5-minute walk down this street to the recycling place here. So it's not far.
Yeah.
You could easily have been there the whole time.
Sarah says the laws are such they can't do things that fast. Plus, as a lifer military history and being in the National Guard, seems it happened pretty quick since it was summer when he was admitted. And I saw that he just purchased the gun. See,
oh, really?
Yeah. Some
well, they're going to get hammered for that.
Well, but I'm kind of surprised that he wouldn't already have one, you know, being ex-military, living in a very pro-gun state. But yeah, but again, Tracy said earlier, and I don't know, you know, different states, there's federal laws around guns, but there's also state laws. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, he passed the background check, and if he bought the gun, I'm sorry, Shirley. I know they do this every time we go live, and I try to hit mute as fast as I can. I'm really sorry.
Tracy's saying he purchased his weapon before he got committed. I think either way, this guy, like as we were saying, he was in the military for 20 years. There was no way if he was feeling a certain kind of way, he wasn't either going to already have guns or be able to get guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jelly Bear, yellow flag. They were asking about this during the press conference earlier. Apparently, Jennifer, he was, yeah. He was a first-class sergeant, which sounds impressive, right? But from what some of you guys were saying in Natasha's chat yesterday, that's not really that high up for 20 years in the military. I know he was a reservist, apparently. He was never based overseas.
Well, I mean, he's not an officer, which, you know, he would be a non-commissioned officer.
Mm-hmm. So I think, as is always the case here, right, it's going to raise the whole topic of gun laws and all that kind of stuff, regulation, whatnot, mental health. And just the modern day phenomenon of these types of mass shootings, right, is very much a modern day problem. And I think that's the kind of discussion I'd like to have, right? Because it's a difficult discussion, but I think that's where we need to go. I saw a few people earlier pointing out some criticism of law enforcement, the way hey, Helen, the way that law enforcement were communicating, and I kind of have to agree in this instance. Like I know, Cheryl, you were saying there in chat that, you know, they're always well advised to be to temper their communication, but there's a few things that went on here that were a little different. You know, a couple of things. There seemed to be a sense of underplaying the actual danger that was at hand, right? I think there's a line between not overly concerning the public and patronizing the public, you know.
Yeah.
I think people needed to know that this was they never mentioned anything about his military background. That was all coming from the media, not from the communication from law enforcement. I thought that was strange. And then I was watching the press conference earlier with Helen, the main guy that was doing the communication from law enforcement, and I have to say, I had a bit of a problem with the way that he was communicating. You know, he was very, I don't know, he seemed too excited about this whole exercise. It was, I don't know, my gut didn't like it. Did anyone else get that impression? If anyone else seen the press conference earlier? Am I being too harsh? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know you didn't see it, Cheryl.
I didn't. So I can't speak. I did. There was a lot of coverage, and I know that you did quite a few lives with Natasha, but I wasn't able to watch them, so I don't know what was being said.
The short guy, Pussycat. Yeah, the main guy. I think he had a shaved head. The guy with glasses. I just got the impression that this guy had been pushing pens for 20 years, and all of a sudden, he was just overly excited about the logistics of this whole thing. Yeah, very animated, Helen. That's probably hypercritical, but I'm just being honest. I didn't like it.
Were you talking about the law enforcement guy that was, or the whoever was talking?
Yeah, I mean,
well, Maine is a very small state. Maine is a very small state, and I mean, other than, you know, Stephen King books, I don't think much happens in Maine. I mean, I could be wrong, but you know,
I love the Stephen King connection.
Huh?
I love the Stephen King connection.
Well, I mean, there's Stephen King. I mean, that's the first thing I think about when I hear about Maine.
Same.
Right. And then they get nor'easters. You don't really hear a lot of things. I mean, obviously they have the same problems everywhere else in the United States has, but maybe they were. And I've never heard of Lewiston, Maine, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm not geographically inclined, so geographically. So maybe they were just shocked. I mean,
Okay, I'll play a little clip, and you can decide for yourself, Cheryl. Hold on.
Okay. And when was this?
This was
That you're about
today.
to... Oh, okay.
This was today.
Yeah, he is London. He is. Stephen King is very funny. He's got a pretty dry, dark sense of humor. I love it.
I'm going to tell you that in advance. We've got nothing to hide in that regard at all. So then you're going to have some sonar as well that's going to be utilized here. And that can look like a couple of different things. A remote operating vehicle, an ROV, is divers would use that. And that will look like a pod under the water. And that is looking for sonar. So picking up shadows, if you will, of what does that look like? Could be a log, could be anything under there. And our divers, that dive team, and that, when I say, again, our divers, that's going to be teams from all over the place. Our Maine Warden Service is heavily involved in this. We work with them all the time. The Maine State Police dive team will be in the water and will be leading this initiative. So that's what we'll see here with a couple of different kinds of sonar. And then along the shoreline, you're going to see a line search, if you will. That means literally officers on line as they're working that shoreline. And of course, they're looking for evidence. They're looking for anything that may help them down the road. Now, I say you'll see this because for us, we want to make sure that we're working with you. So there is a church parking lot across the road here. And there's also some parking available on this side of the road. Mark Laddie, who is the PIO from the Maine Warden Service, and some officers will be in this area to assist. So if you decide that you want to go to that location to pick up video and see what they're up to, then I think there's some parking opportunities here. This 196 can be busy. This area here happens to be pretty low speed. At least that's what the speed limit is. So we're going to be around there to try to keep that as safe as possible. But we want you to be mindful that we may ask you not to stand on a railroad trestle, or, we want you to get your coverage. We want to be partners with you. However, you're not going to be able to have full access to that site. I think that's common sense. And we want to make sure that you can do your jobs and we can help you facilitate that. So you're going to see a bunch of people in that area, that 531 Lisbon Road. A couple of these other locations, if we start here, this is the bowling alley scene. This red dot is actually where that is. You all understand that. We will have some additional officers there checking this wood line and continuing to do those sweeps, those searches. There was a lot of shots fired in these locations. We want to make sure we have all the evidence humanly possible. And then this is far from ideal, considering it's directly behind the podium. But this is, can we do that? We're jammed in here with the...
Yeah, obviously, I'm not going to play all, obviously. Am I being too hypercritical, or was he just a little bit... his manner was a little bit off for me. I didn't like it. But that's me. Thanks for the ranking list there, Jilly. Yeah, so he wasn't that high up, right? All things considered. Oh, someone agrees with me?
Yeah, I mean, again, not really watching it, but I think that's, hey, we're going to be in this area right here. We're going to be expanding here. Don't be standing on the railroad tracks. If you see this here, that just kind of seemed weird. Why don't you just say, we're locking down these areas. You're not going to be able to get through while we're searching these. I mean, I know it's not a mass shooting by any stretch of the imagination. It's absolutely not the same thing. But we had a shooting here in town earlier this week, too. And only one person was shot. But what was odd about it is, the guy took off. And so all the police, in force went out to hunt this guy down to find him. And we were getting texts, because you can sign up for texts through, your fire department, your police department. And they're going, heavy police presence in this area. Please stay away from there. And then you get another one going, now the police have moved to this. Please stay away from there. I know it's not the same as a mass shooting, but there wasn't a whole big news conference with maps on the walls. And they're just saying, hey, we're looking for this guy. Stay away from where we're at.
Yeah. I mean,
Overkill,
with this guy,
yes.
I think you just have to see the whole thing really to kind of get where I'm coming from.
Well, he did
Um,
kind of seem like he's like, again, I'm just looking at a few minutes of it, kind of like, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life kind of thing. Not that he was happy about it, don't get me wrong. But it's like this, you know, he's and this, and he's pointing at the map, and he's making a point of saying, please don't stand on these railroad tracks. And, you know, it kind of seemed...
He just seemed to be losing himself a bit too much, you know, with the mechanics of it all. You know, I wouldn't have liked to have seen that, you know, as someone related to a victim. That's just my kind of judgment, and it is a judgment, you know. It's probably hypercritical, but there it is. But what we should talk about, I mean, and I was just saying this to you before we came on, Cheryl. What blew my mind is the fact that there's been, is it 36 mass killings in the US so far this year? 36.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy to me. And you weren't surprised at that figure, right?
I actually was. I actually thought it would be more than that. Just because, like I said, I remembered it was earlier in the year that somebody was doing a live, or it was on, I don't even remember where I saw it, was somebody said at that point in time, there had already been like 20 some mass shootings in the United States. So I was just thinking by October, it's got to be a lot more than that. So,
yeah.
And again, I don't know how many people, I know there's quite a few Americans in there, but we were talking about this and talking about whether to talk about it, but it's such a difficult topic because it's one of those things where it's like, there's no cut and dry answer. There's no easy fix for it. Right. But so this is, I was, okay, I have a hard time saying this because it comes off sounding horrible, but, and this is what I was trying to explain to you, Rabid, and I want my other Americans to jump in on this and tell me what you think. It's kind of like when you become desensitized. Not that every mass shooting doesn't make you stop and it doesn't, like, you know, break your heart. I've seen some things where they were talking about, you know, some of the victims, and of course it breaks your heart. And, you know, I kind of felt a little, you know, choked up a little bit, but in a day or two, something new comes along, and it just doesn't. I remember when Columbine happened, you know, and that stuck around, and that stuck for so long. But now it's so common that within a few days, I mean, they'll still be reporting on the news every now and then about some of the memorials and the funerals, and you'll see, you know, videos on TikTok and probably on YouTube. But as a country, I was explaining to him, I went on to 9/11 too. Yeah. I went on to YouTube last night trying to look at some news. You know, I went to the news section because I haven't been able to keep up with this all week, and I wanted, you know, to watch some videos. And under, you know, top US news, it was all other stuff. There was nothing. I had to actually search for videos about this. It was all other stuff, and that made me sad. And because again, it happens here so often. It's kind of like, you know, like what I said, it's like we have hurricanes and they're tragic and people die and they're devastating financially and all that. And it's always big news right when it happens, but then it goes away and we'll have another hurricane, you know, and another one will come. It's feeling like mass shootings. That's how we're seeing it. But I told you, I have Sky News on YouTube. I'm subscribed to their channel. Like every little video in, you know, like a 10-hour period was Sky News was talking about the shooting, but our own news at least on YouTube. I don't know what it was like on TV because, you know, like I said, I'm on YouTube. The little, you know, video blurbs weren't even about this shooting.
This may surprise you, Cheryl, but it was on the national news over here.
Well, I mean, it was on the national news over here, but yeah. Sometimes I think other countries, how do I say this? It just from looking at what I was seeing, it looked like you guys were way more invested in it than we were. And I hope I'm wrong. Again, I'm just looking at YouTube. I'm not looking at, you know, news articles or anything like that. But I want to know what other Americans out there think. How are you guys feeling about it? You know, because we live this, right?
Yeah.
You know, people in malls, people at bowling alleys, people at, you know, outside festivals. We live this. This is becoming a real thing for us.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you know, other countries, especially your guys is over there. It's not something that you have to think about, where we do. I mean, it started with, well, when I say we do, I don't think everybody in the country, some country, and Maine was probably one of them. Maine was probably immune from it. They didn't think about it, you know, Vegas, Texas, LA, places like that. But we definitely think about it in our schools. How I was telling you, when I went to school, we had fire drills and we had earthquake drills. Now kids have active shooter drills on a regular basis. I mean, it's horrifying.
That figure there, Mary, 536, is that the total amount of victims this year, is it?
Where are you reading that? Oh, just the number. Okay.
Yeah, it's up a bit there.
That's a lot of... And see, I think, this is my personal opinion, I can be completely wrong, and I put the link in the chat. I would like somebody else to come up and talk about this too, because if you're interested.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I don't think, for me, from what I've seen, the mass shootings aren't so much related to the gun problems that we seem to have here in the US. It's more of a mental health thing.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that.
The majority of the mass shootings, it relates more back to mental health, where I don't think everybody that goes out and shoots up places or kills people have mental health issues, but it does seem that the majority of them, it's more of a mental health problem than an access to guns problem or the type of guns problem. Just
yeah. So just think about it, like, just as a place to start on this, right? Let's just, for anyone, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that think, well, it's quite a simple solution, right? Just ban guns. Why won't you just ban guns and then the problem's dealt with, right? Well, it's obviously not that simple, right? For quite a few reasons. But even as a place to start, just think about the fact that Maine as a state itself, right, has one of the highest rates of gun ownership, but yet one of the lowest rates of gun-related crimes. Why is that, right? There's obviously a certain culture in Maine. Like this, what's happened here is a complete outlier.
it's not. Sorry, go ahead.
No, on you go.
I was just gonna say, well, the problem with, again, I mean, to me, there's two different issues to talk about, but the problem isn't the guns, it's the problem of who has the guns. And that is what the problem that, for me, is not easily solved. I mean, first off, I'm gonna say I'm very pro-gun rights. I don't agree with taking people's guns, but again, taking people's guns or taking people's guns rights away are only going to be doing it for the people that abide by the law, because the criminals are never going to abide by the law and they're always going to have guns. So now all you're doing is making people completely defenseless, but that's a whole separate subject. So first up, we're never going to get rid of guns in the United States. That's just never going to happen. Even if we sanction or put, regulations around what type of guns, doesn't matter. People can still go in and shoot up a school or shoot up a McDonald's or a bowling alley with a 9mm with, 4 or 5 clips in it, right? They can still do that. So that's not going to solve the problem. Again, this is one of those things where it's like, what would help? I don't know.
So you don't think limiting the magazine capacities would have any effect?
No. Because so you're talking about, so you're saying like instead of a magazine that holds 30 rounds, that it's illegal to have any that hold more than 15 rounds. Well, then you're just carrying five magazines in your pocket. And it really only takes a matter of 3 to 5 seconds to reload a magazine. And I'm probably being pretty generous. Anybody that it would take me 3 to 5 seconds, but
see, in a moment like that where someone is shooting into the public, like seconds matter. Seconds are life or death, right?
Yeah,
if you're limiting the magazine,
it's not going to stop it. It's not.
No, but if it hinders the ability to kill more people than less, is that not a good thing? If you imagine someone having to change a magazine every like 5 or 6 rounds,
right?
Like those seconds could matter to people.
Right, but that's only going to help going forward. What about all the stuff that's already out there now? And again, we're not talking about the law-abiding person who's carrying a gun for whatever reason, or who goes to the shooting range, or what. If somebody has malicious intent, they're not going to care whether the law says that they can't have a magazine that only holds X amount of rounds. There's magazines out there that hold more rounds now. How would you get rid of all those? Those are always so. By lowering that, that's not going to change this particular problem.
But if you do that in conjunction with making magazines with a certain capacity illegal, right, then you're starting the process of getting these off the ground. It's never going to eradicate the problem, right? Because and unfortunately, it's going to become more accessible to criminals. Well, not more, but it's going to be still accessible to criminals, right? And it's going to affect, like you say, law-abiding citizens who just want to defend themselves, right? So are you just hindering those law-abiding citizens that have a right, like the Second Amendment says, to defend themselves?
That's my opinion.
But then if you go on the other side of the coin, where's it going to end up? Are we going to be arming teachers in schools?
Possibly. I don't know.
Do you want to go there?
Like I said, I don't know the answers to any of this. All I know is what I don't think would work. Because like you said, it's like a lock only keeps an honest man honest, right? The only people that, if we were to put all these laws in place around guns, that's only going to hinder the law-abiding people. It's not going to change the behavior of the criminals. It's not going to hinder the accessibility of the criminals to get these things. So again, and I hate that. I hate being one of those people that like constantly just throws problems at you with no solutions. But I don't know the solution to this. I really don't. Except for we're all just going to move to the UK because you guys can't have guns there, and that's a safer place to be if you want to be
right
away from guns. So we'll just move to the UK.
Yeah. Hey, Tracy.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey. Yeah, this is a great conversation for sure. And everybody's making such wonderful points. And, so there's the mental health issue and there's the law and the gun issue. So where we go from there is trying to merge the two of them is, in my opinion.
Yeah, because
how do that? I mean, how do I? Again, I get what you're saying, Tracy, 1000%. But we all know that here in the U.S., we have that right to bear arms, and there's nothing in the world that's ever going to change that. So how do we modify it to make places safe? It's never going to be safe, but safer.
Well, I think we need to look at And in terms of offensive versus defensive, I think the Second Amendment was actually written so that we can defend ourselves. And I think what's going on is that people are using firearms to be offensive, like in this case that we're talking about right here. And if we're using guns in whatever capacity that they're legal to defend our homes, our families, I think people really have a problem with us trying to take that right away. But the thing is, what's going on is that people with mental health conditions are going out and using that right and doing offensive things. And I don't know that I actually put this in the chat, but I wanted to come on here and just say that because there's a difference between offensive and defensive, and just like sports and stuff like that. I didn't want to actually type that out, so I was kind of lazy and just came up here. I won't be on for long, but it's good
Oh,
to
no,
see
no,
you too and hang out.
you're welcome up here. Yeah, it's good to see. It's good to hear from you as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
I 100% agree with you. But we've all heard the arguments from the anti-gun people and the pro-gun people trying to bend or use the Second Amendment, and they both use the same amendment to for their own cause. I agree with you, Tracy. Don't get me wrong. I agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate here that I don't know. I don't think as a country, our government will ever be able to come to some yes, we're going to meet in the middle, and we think that that's a good. I think we took steps, the whole having to, go through a background check before you can purchase a gun and all that. But again, that's only for the law-abiding people. And these people that are doing these mass shootings that are going into schools and all this stuff, they're not the law-abiding people. Now, this guy went out and bought a gun. If that's true, he did. He just bought it. That doesn't mean he couldn't have got one if he got rejected for getting it, even with his mental. I don't know the mental health aspect of that, but it sounds like he probably should have been denied. But doesn't mean he couldn't have gotten one,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, I think what happened was he got the gun back in April. And so he was a firearms instructor, and he knew what to do with guns. And he was, a lifer military guy, which I didn't know he was
Specialist.
a lifer. Yeah, and as well, yeah. So he's an E7, which is a specialist, an enlisted 7. So he was a staff sergeant basically. And after 20 years, you should probably be a little bit higher ranking, in my opinion. I've been a military wife and and have all that experience. So yeah, he should have been a warrant officer or something like that after that amount
Yeah.
of time doing that instruction. But anyway, but basically, if you're going to use a gun for offensive means, you should be able to lose the right to use that gun. But the problem is that it's too late when we figure that out, right? Oh, this person
Yeah.
used a gun for offensive means. They should lose their gun. Well, sometimes they do what happened with Card. He was found dead, and he ended up doing this mass shooting,
Yeah.
which I don't agree with. So how are we going to be able to figure out whether this guy is a risk or not? Somebody said in the chat earlier that people know how to lie to mental health people. And that's true. I mean, we have to take them at face value when they say yeah, well, I have firearms, but I'm completely fine to use them. And I actually have seen the light. They know how to lie. And that's hard for us to deal with when we're looking at mental health and guns. It's like, do we want to take these people's guns away? Well, yeah, if they're going to hurt people, but then no, if we want to help them to feel safe in the world and preserve their Second Amendment rights, it's not an easy solution.
Yeah, and guns are only legal to be used defensively anyway, right? It's not legal to use a gun offensively unless you're hunting. Do you know?
Yeah, no, that's that's a good point.
The regarding mental health, I mean, the only tangible way to accommodate that is obviously more flagging systems, you know, which would make it difficult for people to obtain weapons, you know, if they've gone through some mental health problems, right? But even that gets a bit dicey, you know. People are not gonna. I mean, there's so many mental health problems people would have that they would argue wouldn't cause them to become any more likely to use it offensively, right? They have as much a right to defend themselves as someone without, I don't know, something like anxiety or depression. It's so difficult.
Well, there have been plenty of mass shooters that we haven't even known to have, like this one. Yeah, they were committed to a hospital for a week or two back in the summer. They had purchased a
Yeah.
gun beforehand, and they hadn't had that gun taken away because they had been determined to be well. You know, there's plenty of situations where, you know, people haven't had a history of mental illness at all, and then they've gone and shot up people in a parade or at a celebration or in a house of worship, or you know, and that, you know, that is where, and this is where I'm going to probably just say what I have to say and get off the phone, is where we have to be vigilant, yeah, of our friends, our family members, our neighbors, our coworkers, and just
Yeah.
observe what their behaviors are and what they're saying,
Yeah.
what their words are, and if they actually own firearms. And now you don't get to report them, but you can actually be observant of their what they say and who they are
Yeah.
and what they own and what they want to do. A lot of people just laugh it off. And I think it's like the
Mhm.
time is done to, I think we just should not laugh it off anymore. It's awful what's happening in the United States since Columbine. Everything has just gone off the rails. There's been so many mass shootings. It's unbelievable. So
Do you
we
know?
need to observe.
Do you know something has just occurred to me as you were saying that?
Mhm.
I think I'm right in saying the mental health awareness has never been higher in society in the West. Like, there's never been more awareness of issues with mental health and mental health treatment. That's not to say it's not a problem. I think it's probably one of the biggest problems that we have, which sounds like a contradiction, but I think that's true, right? There has never been as much awareness, and yet mass shootings like this, school shootings, have never been higher, despite the fact that homicides overall have gone down. So even though homicides and violent crimes have gone down over the decades, these types of crimes, mass shootings, have gone up. Mental health awareness has gone up.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a really complicated problem, right?
I just read. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say that mental health people are just people who see people as a part of their profession, but the real heroes here are all of you guys, everybody in the communities, people that interact with their neighbors, you know, their friends, their coworkers, people that they meet at the grocery store, whatever.
Yeah.
People need to observe people and then encourage help for people when they think that there's something that is not quite right. And I know that people, you know, the average Joe is not trained to do that, but you can't just leave it to the mental health people. You just can't. It's too big of a problem right now.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest something, right? I don't think you're gonna agree with this, Tracy, right? But this is perfectly fine for you not to agree with us, right? I don't even know if I agree with this myself yet, but I suspect this might be true. I'm just putting this out there. Is it perhaps the problem that in the West, the way society has become, that people have become too reliant upon mental health as an assistance, or as some people might suggest, a scapegoat? and people have just become weaker as individuals, right, and more reliant upon outside help rather than looking within themselves. Like, do we live in a kind of nanny society where we're teaching our kids that they deserve to be heroes or they deserve to be celebrities, that they're special, and when they grow up and life doesn't turn out that way, then mental health is the first port of call? Are people just becoming weaker?
What do you think, Cheryl? I want to hear from Cheryl about that because she has a lot of really good thoughts and ideas.
Go for it, Cheryl.
Well, first off, I'm Gen X, so I tend to believe that.
Me too.
We were raised a little different, so it's harder for me to watch. I get what you're saying, Rabid, and I do agree with that to a certain extent. The problem that I see as far as where this goes is, regardless if their people are believing that it's okay for them to need a safe room in every building that they go in because they're having a bad moment in time, regardless of whether I agree with, basically, suck it up, buttercup kind of philosophy. If that's causing them to react with these shootings with the kids, in schools and stuff like that, regardless, there's a reason that we didn't have school shootings like this in the 80s, but we have them now. I'm not saying that in the 80s we were tougher, but we were kind of tougher because we didn't have mental health professionals constantly checking in on us. We didn't have safe rooms. We didn't get excused from school because we were having a bad day. But we also didn't have shootings either. So I don't think mental health is actually as much of a problem as it is for mental health, but people believing that they have mental health issues to the extent to where they'll go to that place and walk into a school and shoot it up because they believe they have those mental health issues.
Yeah,
Probably.
that's what I'm getting at. That's
Yes.
what I'm getting at, right? Are people training themselves, and is it being suggested to them that mental health
I think it's split
perhaps
down the middle. I think it's split down the middle because there were many of people when I was growing up that, looking back now, definitely had mental health issues. And if it were now in this day and age, it would have been a lot easier for them to get help. And again, this is just a fact, especially men. I mean, back then, a man first off, he didn't even talk about his feelings, let alone go to a counselor. They just didn't do that in the 80s. So I think that it's split down the middle. Yeah, I think that the mental health accessibility is great right now because there are people that feel more comfortable reaching out and getting that help. And that's great. But I also believe, what do they call them? Snowflakes? They call them snowflakes?
Snowflakes.
I do believe that. I do believe that a lot of people are using that, like, they're having a bad day. You're triggering me. The whole world's supposed to change how they behave because this one person has been taught that their feelings are so valid that everybody else's don't exist anymore. And then they, again, I've never heard so many people say that they have anxiety. They have, all these issues. And some people probably do. I don't believe everybody that believes that they have all these issues have them. Sorry, Tracy. That's probably not what you wanted to hear.
No, I actually think it's kind of true because I grew up in the 80s too, and we didn't have these problems at all. We just kind of sucked it up, buttercup. But we've got our own issues.
Well, we
now because of that.
We don't talk, Tracy. We don't talk about those publicly. Gen Xers don't do that. We just suck it up.
Well, I'm actually on the cusp of being a boomer and a Gen Xer, but yeah, I know what you mean. But I think that the observations of your neighbors and your friends and your family members, and so I read the article about Robert Card and his sister-in-law talking about all these things that she's observed. He's a sweet guy, he's all this stuff, but he was having some problems. Well, okay, so. I mean, not to call her out or anything, and I don't know what you two think about if you've read what she said or not, but why the fuck didn't she actually say, listen, you need to get rid of your weapons because of your
Mhm.
safety. And
Mhm.
I know that people don't want to get rid of their weapons, but just say, like, we're not going to, have your license revoked, but can we just keep them in a safe place until we know you're stable? And they didn't do that. And I'm not saying shame on them, but I'm saying that we have an opportunity right now to be able to do this differently and learn from what happened. And maybe we
So what?
can start to do that with our neighbors and friends and our family members.
So what is your suggestion? Let's just go along that line. Let's say that they did do that, and he's like, "No, I'm fine. No, I'm fine." There is no recourse other than calling into the police, like, "Hey, look, my brother is whatever." But there's no guarantee. I mean, like you said, yeah, suggesting to, "Hey, you don't really seem like you're in a good place. Let me have your guns." And I have actually done that with a friend before, and the friend knew that they were not in a good place, and they willingly handed them over, which was great. But not everybody's going to do that. So what do you do then?
Yeah, when they say like, sorry, not going to do that.
Yeah.
I guess what you could do is, if you were that friend, you could say, all right, well, so if you're not going to hand anything over, and obviously, I'm observing some things that aren't, really great with you. If you don't choose to hand it over, then I'm going to call the police and have them put you on their radar. And so they get a choice, right? The police get to, so you call the police not to say, oh yeah, this person's a danger, because they're really not at that point. You have a feeling about them, but they're not actually saying, hey, I'm going to go out and do this in a bowling alley and a bar, and or doing some really crazy stuff. So they're not actually a true threat, but you could tell them, listen, I care about you, and I care about the public. So if you're not going to surrender your weapons, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the police keep an eye on you. So you get to choose. What do you want to do?
Well, and that's hoping that you live in a place where the police have the capacity to do that also. I mean, if you were going to do that, like in LA or maybe even Seattle, those big cities, the police would be like, okay, it's noted. So if something happens, but other than that, there's not much that they can do, right?
Yeah, good point. Yeah. There's no perfect solution for it, but I think that having the conversations that we're having right now is a good start, and having us observe other people in our worlds, because it could be your next door neighbor. It could be your brother. It could be your sister-in-law. It could be whoever. But if you...
Yeah, Cheryl was just saying that.
Exactly. Yeah. If you observe something and you have the instinct that something might be wrong, then talk to the person first and say, hey, is everything okay? Can I help you with anything? Is there anything you need? And maybe that could go a longer way than we think it could, because if somebody had done that with Card, I don't know if they did. Obviously, somebody committed him. That was probably a really, a person who's committed to a mental hospital for a couple of weeks, that is not an easy experience. And who knows what that did to his head. And then I've had clients who have done, it's supposed to help you, but it's actually done harm. And so maybe that's what happened in this case. I don't know. But I just know that I would like to be able to have everybody, at least the people who are listening to this, be more vigilant with people in their own world, and with themselves too, right? We don't own firearms here at our house. I did just purchase what is it called? A pain pen, and that's a defensive
pain
weapon.
pen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can send you
I want one of them.
What is a pain pen?
Well, let's see. I have it here. I could actually turn on my camera and use it. But I'm not really great at demonstrating it. But let me see.
Well, don't, because we don't want you to accidentally hurt yourself.
Well, I did it on
Is
this
it
guy's
like
channel.
a taser?
Yeah, it's kind of a taser unit sort of thing. And I went to a gun show with my friend Valerie, because I don't own a gun. But I did actually go to this gun show. So I don't know how to actually
Oh, Tracy dropped.
Well, yeah, but she'll be back.
Oh, she'll be back.
The only thing, and I had a taser for a minute in time. I have like a little thing of mace that I have on my keychain, and I bought some. My neighbor gave me. It's this thing that you put on. It looks like what do they call those? Those knuckle rings, but it looks kind of like it's shaped like a cat's head, so it's got two pointy spikes sticking up, so you can punch someone and kind of stab them with it. But for me. Suzanne says she tased herself.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to relax till you come back up here, Tracy.
But the only thing for me thinking about that, and I think that's great. I think, like I said, I have mace, and these things, but for those things, the person has to get a little closer to me than I would ever want anybody to get to me if they have really bad intentions, right? You didn't tase yourself, right, Tracy?
No.
Thank God for that.
No, so this is my pain pen here, and I'm going to demonstrate it effectively. And so what I did was when I demonstrated it before, I clumsily put it under my sleeve to be able to say, hey, I'm nobody, but then like bap, and so you activate it with this little switch, and then you go, and it makes this huge noise. So right, so
I felt that over here.
Over across the pond, you feel that. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been actually practicing with it, and so I can actually grab it in the dark and turn it around and activate it, and then you don't have to do anything with it, and it's not an offensive weapon. But if somebody's coming at you, and you're kind of afraid, you can scare them away with the sound that I just did.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that if they continue to come at you, this thing will put them down. It won't actually render them helpless, but if you like put it at their neck or something like that, and you do that and you hold on to it for a couple of 3-4 minutes. 3-4 minutes, sorry.
Seconds.
It was supposed to be like 5 seconds or something.
I'm all for holding it for 3 or 4 minutes. Don't let them get
Cheryl would do it. Cheryl will do it for 4 hours.
It's purple. It's my favorite color. So anyway, I don't even know why we got onto that subject, but this is my the pain pen that I got. There's other alternatives, to defend your property other than having an AR-15. Okay, so
I do see a potential problem with that, though, Tracy.
Oh, what would that be?
I just hope no one that happens to vape gets that pen.
Oh, right.
Can you imagine?
That would be you, right? Like
that would be me.
You'd confuse your vape pen with your pain pen.
Right? You can see.
Oh my gosh.
You can see the problem.
Yeah, well, maybe you shouldn't get one then. I mean, it works fine with me because I don't vape, but
I think especially for people who don't feel comfortable, sorry, but Suzanne, you're killing me. She says, or has a vibrator the same color. Yeah, just don't keep them in the same drawer.
Wow, that would be interesting.
Probably not something you need to worry about, Rabid, but just yes, get one in a different color. I think all of those are great, especially for people who don't feel comfortable with guns, or they live in a state where they can't carry one. That's great, but I'm not gonna lie. I mean, when I take my gun with me, when I do road trips and stuff, it's not actually for protection from humans. It's protection from wild animals. Like if I wreck and I'm stuck, hanging upside down in my car or in my truck with the seatbelt and I can't get out, but all of a sudden some bear decides, hey, that's what my gun's for. But I would feel definitely safer with a gun, because even with the stun guns, I mean, the mace or bear spray, I saw somebody said they carry bear spray, which is just, that's effective. on humans just as much as maces. They still have to get too close to me if I can prevent that. But those are great if you get, tagged from behind, because if somebody jumped me from behind, I'm not going to have time to dig into my friggin' bag and find my gun. So that's why I do have mace on my keychain too. So those are all those. But see, again, that leads us down that road of where we are in the United States, where your whole life is, especially, and I'm not trying to sound all, feminist or anything, but especially for women, we live in a perpetual state of being on guard all the time and thinking about our surroundings. And I just think that, especially with all the mass shootings and stuff, like I said, going to McDonald's, going to the mall, going to a bowling alley, going to a concert, everybody needs to be aware. And other than what you brought up, Tracy, which was a very good point, and I thank you for bringing that up. Know your people, check on your people, not just because we're worried about mass shootings, but just check on your people. But yeah, and again, we don't know. That's the other scary thing. We don't know how many potential mass shootings have been prevented because somebody checked on someone and somebody did something,
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me up here. Tomorrow I'm going to be dressing up as the Bride of Chucky. So wish me luck with that. It was interesting. I was like, what's in my background? This is the scar makeup that I'm going to be using on my husband. And we are going to be golfing. And I'm going to be the Bride of Chucky. And he's going to be Chucky. It's going to be a hoot and a half. And so, nice. Happy Halloween. And yes, keep an eye on your neighbors, your friends, yourself, your coworkers, and everybody else, and just be prepared to just say, "Hey, I've noticed this, and I'm wondering that, and how can I be of help?" I think that if we all did that, that maybe people could keep their firearms and keep them safely if they need to keep them. So
thank you.
Yeah, take care, you guys. It was great talking with you, and hope to
You
see
too,
you.
Tracy.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm waving at you.
Enjoy
Bye.
Halloween.
All right, happy Halloween. Woo! Bye-bye.
Woo. Hey, Pink, how are you? Okay, I just noticed a really cool thing here on StreamYard. You can actually star comments, and it keeps them in a separate little list. That's handy.
Oh, really?
Do you know how?
Cool.
Yeah. Do you know how there's comments that you may have to scroll way back for?
Yeah.
Well, if you can star them here, you should be able to do it as well. Actually, it's handy.
I do see the little stars. Oh.
Yeah.
I never.
Do you see it's got two there? You see it's got two on the side? So this was one from earlier. I wanted to bring this one up to you, Cheryl. The Second Amendment is for us to defend against a rogue government, right?
Exactly.
So,
yes.
What do you?
Go ahead.
What do you make of the argument that the Second Amendment itself is the problem, right? That it's outdated. It was written at a time where a rogue government was a real possibility, a realistic possibility, where the public would have to, overturn the government, right? They got out of control, and that goes back to like the 18th century, right? What do you make of that argument that it's outdated and it needs re-amending because of the problems with guns?
I agree with that. People like to say the Second Amendment. They like to use it for their own cause. But if you actually read the wording of it, that's exactly what it was for. But I agree. I don't see that happening. I just don't. I don't know. I mean, I would love that. And I'm not saying this anything against, my fellow Americans. I just don't see that happening. Just the mention that happened just this past Thanksgiving. Just we're not talking politics. We're not. But just as an example, my son and his girlfriend's dad made some comment, and I stay away from political talk because You know, I have my opinions, they have theirs. Nobody's ever going to win. I just stay away from it. But I was walking away and they said some comment about, you know, they're trying to take our guns. I said, nobody's trying to take anybody's guns. That's all I said. I said, nobody's trying to take your guns. Wow. I mean, you would think that I set the turkey on fire or something.
Right.
Like everybody just lost their mind. And so I'm like, okay, it's time for me to go do the pies. Yeah. People feel so strongly one way or the other over here. It just almost seems kind of futile to even bring the discussion to the table because it feels like nobody wants to bend. Everybody just wants to stick by their beliefs and leave it at that. Does that make sense? I'm putting, by the way, I'm
No, it does.
multitasking.
It's a very difficult topic because I think
It is over here. And you know, again, I live in a very red state. And I have very, very strong Republican beliefs friends. And I haven't fallen out with any of them, but that's probably, honestly, to be honest, because I refuse to have those discussions. I know what their opinions are. I can see their opinions on Facebook and Instagram. I don't agree with them. But if I were to engage in that conversation, I don't know how many of them I would still have as friends because I disagree with a lot of it. So, and the guns is one of the biggest things. And then when you bring up mass shootings, they kind of do the same thing that we're doing right now. You know, they're like, well, what's the good answer? Nobody has a good answer for it.
okay, I'm going to put a poll in. I don't do this very often, but I'll be interested to see what the guys in here think. Trying to think how to word it. Do you believe gun laws need to be amended to restrict possession?
I found something while you're doing that. I'm going to read this because I Googled this while Tracy was talking.
Okay.
So you do your poll. So I'm going to read this really quick. Federal law established a baseline national standard regarding individual eligibility to acquire and possess firearms. Under federal law, people are generally prohibited from purchasing or possessing firearms if they have been convicted of a felony or some domestic violence misdemeanors, or if they are subject to certain court orders related to domestic violence or serious mental conditions. However, federal law merely provides a floor and has notable gaps that allow individuals who have demonstrated significant risk factors for violence or self-harm to legally acquire and possess guns. So instead of looking up all 50 states, I looked up mine because I thought I knew them, but I wanted to make sure. So Alaska prohibits a person from possessing a concealed firearm or handgun after having been convicted of a felony or adjudicated a delinquent minor for conduct that would constitute a felony if committed by an adult by any court. However, this prohibition does not apply if the felony was not an offense against a person and a period of 10 years or more has elapsed between the date of the person's unconditional discharge at the date of the violation. So that I didn't know. So it's not across the board. If you're a felon in Alaska, you can't have a gun. If there was no victim, if it was a victimless crime, as far as an actual person involved, there's always a victim in any crime, actually. But and it's been more than 10 years. So this goes on and on and on, but there's 3 bullet points that they make a point of saying on here. Alaska has no state law prohibiting firearm purchase or possession by people convicted of violent misdemeanors. So as long as it's not a felony, it's just a misdemeanor, even though it may have been a violent one, you can still get a gun. People subject to mental health related court orders. So if you've got a court order saying that, you need to be evaluated or this and that and da-da-da-da-da, that won't necessarily prevent you from buying a gun. And people, this is the one that bugs the crap out. People subject to domestic violence restraining orders. That's a new one. I do know that 20 years ago, if you had a domestic violence restraining order on you, you had to forfeit your guns while that restraining order was in effect. Apparently, that is not the case anymore. So that's scary, right? In my state. Now, every state would be different, but you know, you wouldn't necessarily have to forfeit your guns. You can own a gun. You could have a restraining order. You could have 17 restraining orders against you from, you know, an ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, ex-husband, ex-wife, and you can still go out and buy a gun. That wasn't the case 20 years ago, but that is now.
You wouldn't expect that to be the case, would you? Wow, that's in Alaska, obviously, right?
Yes.
See, that is the problem, Stacey. Taking all weapons, the problem with that is that only criminals would have them. It really is the case that the genie is just out of the bottle. I mean, the most that can be done is some kind of higher regulation, you know, whether it's things like restrictions on assault type weapons, magazine capacities, but as you heard Cheryl say, that might not even address the problem.
So Thingamajig said, I'm not trying to change the subject on you, but hi, Robert. Hi, Cheryl. Have been listening to Can't Stay Silent anymore. Look up the Port Arthur massacre. It changed gun laws in Australia. If we can do it, so can I'm looking that up. I'm going to say I would like to think it could happen. I'm so pessimistic because it just, yeah.
Yes,
but
Sarah.
I'm looking that up right now.
So how widespread were guns at that point, Thingamajig? When did that happen? Was that the 70s, 80s?
Or you're welcome to come up here and talk about it, but I'm looking it up right now. Did that go through?
What?
I just put, oh yeah, link to StreamYard. Oh, I have to go over and vote real quick. Do you believe gun laws need to be amended to restrict possession? Well, see, that's like catch-22. I don't know.
Okay, so more people think no. That's interesting.
I was just going to say I'm going to vote no, just based on the wording of your questions, because you're restricting guns. Again, you're only restricting them for the law-abiding people. If you restrict, if there's laws around some sort of gun restriction, just based on the wording.
What is the... Think about this though, right? Could you argue that the inevitable end point of all this is that you literally have school teachers carrying firearms? Like, would you be happy with that? Like a scenario like that, where that is the norm?
Of course I wouldn't, but I also don't like thinking about, my kids are older, but I don't like thinking about my grandson having to do active shooter drills. After 9/11, I have to remember back. So there was this thing, should we let the pilots carry guns so they can defend themselves if somebody tries to come into the cockpit? I know that there was a thing about that. I could be wrong. Somebody correct me. I could be wrong because I've slept since then. But they can't. They still don't. There's no weapons in the cockpit. But they started putting air marshals on a lot more planes. So there's, basically secret shoppers. There's air marshals on a lot of flights now who do carry guns. The air marshals do carry guns, but they, if I remember correctly, they elected not to let the pilots have the guns because the pilots aren't trained in physical combat. And if somebody were to get into the cockpit, then they could just as easily take the gun away because, they're pilots. The level of training that they would have to have on top of that just to make sure that that gun was safe in their possession was more than what I think the FAA decided. But
1996.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't you Google it? Because you Google it, you and read faster. That's where I got. It was a mass shooting that occurred April 28th, 1996 in Port Arthur, a tourist town. Two of Brian's victims were known.
Killed
I wanna-
35, wounded 23. The worst massacre in modern Australian history. I want to know how widespread gun possession was then in Australia, though. It couldn't have been as widespread as it is in the US, though, right? So it was more realistic
I don't know. It could have been.
to implement restrictions.
think-
Oh, hold on.
So-
Gun laws in Australia before the massacre. After storming out of a national gun summit in '87, 8 years before the massacre, and following 2 mass shootings in Melbourne earlier in the year, the Premier said it will take a massacre in Tasmania before we get gun reform. A redesign of the laws for all states and territories had been prepared by officers and presented at a meeting. In 1995, it had been rejected by Tasmania.
Okay,
Thingamajig, do you know how widespread were guns at that time?
Suzanne's from Australia too, so she may know too. I don't remember where in Australia she's from. She said we still had semi-autos for clay targets. Okay. In Hawaii, regular citizens can't carry. If you own guns, you have to register. Each one can only keep them in your home. One of the main reasons we haven't moved there. Yeah, I think there are
why,
still.
Billy? You're fine.
What?
You're fine, Jelly. You're fine.
I know a lot of states where you do have to register guns, or at least you used to. I don't ever pretend to know anything about anybody. I just know my state, you do not have to register a gun. You can get a concealed weapons permit, but the only reason why you would ever do that if you live in Alaska is there are other states where we have agreements that they will honor our concealed weapons permit. I think Colorado or Wyoming or one of those states might be one of them. So if I wanted to go to, I'm going to say Wyoming. I don't know if that's one of them, but let's just say if I wanted to go to Wyoming and carry my gun concealed, they require that I have the concealed weapons permit. But in Alaska, you don't have to have that to conceal your weapon. I can put the weapon in my purse, under my coat, under my seat of my car. That's not illegal. The only thing where you would get in trouble is if you get stopped by the police and that's not the first thing that you tell them when they walk up and ask for your license or whatever. If you don't immediately tell them, technically you can be arrested for that, but I don't know anybody that has been. But nobody I know wouldn't tell the police, like, hey, just so you know, I have a weapon, blah, 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 blah. Again, you don't need to be registered. Someone asked earlier, what's all part of the background check to buy a gun? I have no idea. I just know that when I bought mine, I had to fill out this whole form thing online. And then the guy at the gun store, he did something. And then he said, okay, sending it off to be checked. I said, how long does this normally take? And he said, well, it can take a few minutes. It all depends on how busy they're. Oh, you're done. You're good. And that's literally how long it took. That was about it.
Okay, I've got a hypothetical question for you, Cheryl.
Okay.
If you could magically go back in time and eradicate the Second Amendment, right, so the guns were not available across the board, so it would apply to criminals and to law-abiding citizens. If you could magically go back and eradicate that, so that going forward you didn't have a right to have a gun, would you agree with that? That you wouldn't have a right to, no one would have a right to have a gun other than law enforcement.
No, I mean, I live in a state where I wouldn't agree with that. Now, when you say right, that's that's different. So driving a car, contrary to what people think, you don't have a right to drive a car, which is why you have to take a test and get a license, because you don't have a God-given right to drive.
But a vehicle's not designed to kill, right?
Right.
That's a
So
danger of a vehicle, but it's not designed to kill. A gun is.
right, but and again, I don't know I don't know the UK that well. Over here, I'm just gonna go because this is my state, and I'm gonna go here. The hunting, and even take hunting out of it. We have a lot of very large wildlife. Alaska is really well known for people to come here and go hiking and fishing. And I don't know if anybody's ever watched any videos about, especially salmon fishing. You're usually sharing part of that river or that stream with some bear, right? So I wouldn't feel comfortable, with Tracy's little pain pen was great, but I'm not taking a bear on with a pain pen.
But
There's more to guns than just shooting people.
I know, but would it not be worth the trade, right? For that extra bit of danger in terms of things like, wild animals and things, right? To know that X amount of people are not going to die every year.
I mean, obviously, from a human standpoint, obviously, but again, hunting, a lot of states, again, I'm just only going to use my state. A lot of the places, the smaller villages, the substance, I can never say it, substance hunting and fishing, that's how they live. They don't have grocery stores. They're little tiny villages. They don't have grocery stores like we have here in Anchorage. They can't go get hamburger or a steak. They kill what they eat for their entire year, and they share within the town, the little villages that they live in. The reindeer, the moose, the whales, they live off of that. Then they wouldn't. And granted, yes, I know hundreds and hundreds of years ago, they did a lot of it without guns, but that was a different time, and there weren't as many people either. So I'm still going to say no, even though that sounds like a horrible answer.
Wow. Because that's obviously where our disagreement is then, right? I think we found where our disagreement is, because I agree with you pretty much entirely about the present situation, right? But it's more a hypothetical, right? It's more a kind of I don't know what to call it. It's almost like a moral issue.
Can I say if we could go back in time, would I like things to have been structured differently so we wouldn't be where we are now? Absolutely. Absolutely. Could we have the Second Amendment be worded completely differently?
Is that not just the same, though, as agreeing to the poll question, right? That there should be some regulation in terms of position? Because that's kind of what you're arguing for when you say that, right?
That's different. That's if we're starting today, should there be regulation? Just based off of your question, I had to say no, because again, the only people that regulation is going to affect are the law-abiding people. If we could go back in time, but I don't even know how far back we would need to go, because I mean, look at the Pilgrims came over with weapons. So how far back are we going? Back to when the country was, became a country, and then we had a government. The Wild West and all of that, there were guns everywhere. I mean, guns are part of our history.
Yeah,
but they've changed things.
Remember,
like I said, go ahead.
Remember, the Pilgrims came from Europe, right? In Europe, outlawed guns across the board, pretty much.
And then they changed that. See, I don't know your history either. I know that sounds horrible, but.
Yeah. In terms of gun possession, yeah, it's just obviously in Europe, like it's only special circumstances under which a citizen would be able to possess a gun. Yeah.
Right. So going back maybe in a perfect world, whether this would work or not, but going back in history to make it where, again, just like you can't drive without a test and getting a license and all of that good stuff. Granted, there are still going to be bad people that get it, but overall, making it more difficult for anybody to get a gun, because where the people, the people that use them illegally, they start out somewhere. Somebody buys the gun, whether it gets stolen or somebody, needs money, so they sell it to the guy down the street. But everything starts out. So if you had to buy a gun and register it, which in some states you do, that way if that gun is stolen and used in a crime, they can trace it back to where it is. Maybe that would help more. I don't know.
Because I think what I'm getting at, right, is the fact that it's really a cultural issue, right? It's very important to most Americans, right, to have the right to bear arms, and I respect that. I really do, and that just is maybe just the case. It's that simple, right? It's different from the culture elsewhere. Because even posing that question is interesting, right? If you could just go back and reword the Second Amendment so that, or eradicate it, even if you knew it was going to save so many lives, you would still
when I say
be reticent to do it.
When I say reword it, see, this is where it just gets so cringy for me because it's so difficult. When I say reword it, I mean based on now, but back then it was very valid the way it was worded. There was a reason it was worded that way, right? I see. It's hard for me because I live here and I'm not anti-gun and I'm not, anti-Second Amendment per se.
Yeah. And it's
You're
okay
putting me in a
not to
very
be.
uncomfortable position is what I'm saying. I'm having a hard time trying to, hey, Sheila, I'm having a hard time because I know what I want to say. I know what I think I should be saying, but I'm seeing the bigger picture too. So it's not black and white. It's really not. I mean, it's not
It really
like if you
isn't.
could go back in time and kill Hitler or something like that, would you do that? That's totally different, right? So it's just not that black and white for me.
It's not, and that's why it's a difficult conversation, and that's why it's kind of cool that we're acknowledging that, right? That's why it's always difficult to have this particular conversation, because I think what you see a lot is extremes on either side, whereas the answer, if you believe, right, that we want to avoid having school teachers.
Wait a
What's
second.
that?
Suzanne says no volume. Can you guys hear us? Or are we just talking to ourselves?
Put a 1 in chat, guys, if you can hear us. Oh, hey, Sheila. Good morning.
Oh, it's just her. Okay. See, I agree. Maybe that's what we need to go back to. The only guns allowed are muskets. I mean, you're not doing mass shootings with a musket, right? I mean, I'm not trying to be funny about it, but
okay, we're
I don't
okay
know.
for volume.
Yeah, like I said, it just feels uncomfortable for me because I know how I think and how I feel, but I can't exactly explain it.
No, you're explaining it well.
And I don't know the answer. I really don't. I wish we had the answer.
I would never. I mean, I'm playing devil's advocate a bit here in this conversation, right? I would never imagine having the audacity to tell an American citizen that they wouldn't have a certain right, or it would be more difficult for them to obtain a weapon as a law-abiding citizen to be able to defend themselves, right? When crime is what it is. I would never, that would just be too simple and immature.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
They've talked about, maybe tougher laws, tougher gun, not gun law, against criminals who commit crimes with guns. But then we have that problem where, our prisons are overcrowded, so again, I don't know if there's a perfect answer to, I mean, I don't, maybe I really I want to read about this Port Arthur, and maybe I just don't have time to read it because I'm not like you. I can't read and talk at the same time. You're really good at it. But, I want to read about that and see if maybe, that could be another discussion some other time.
Yeah, I mean,
It just-
I'm presuming there's some vital differences between the situation as it was in Australia and as it is in the US right now.
Well, no, I don't know. Suzanne was saying that Suzanne, back then, did you guys have a lot of guns? Because I know, a lot of Australians, a lot of Australia is, not populated. So I guess I just assumed, I don't know what you hunt, but hunting, you having guns for protection out, because I know, shit, I see those videos of those kangaroos, those things look like they've been hanging out in gyms and stuff. So I don't know. Did you guys have, bolt guns? We handed in 24. So
wow.
A lot of people had guns, and then they created this law, and then people had to hand them over.
By the sounds of it, yeah. Stacey says, even though I carry and I am pro weapons for defense, I don't think any regular citizen needs an automatic rifle, machine gun, etc.
That's where I stand, Stacey. I have the exact same thing. I do know that I mean, I know plenty of people who use ARs for hunting. I don't understand the point of that, but they do. But they don't need to. They really don't need to. So that has always been my stance on it. Is automatic weapons like that, machine guns, the AR, things like that. Other than bragging rights, I don't see. But again, that's the kind of comment that I say with people within my family or my friends that, whew, like I said, you think I set the world on fire, and it always boils down to,
I mean,
it's my right, I can have it. Well, but what?
Right?
The government wants to take our guns. No, they just want to take a certain types of guns that there's no reason that you need to have, and then there's this, but I can have it. That's the point. I can have it, whether you agree with it, So it's kind of like this vicious cycle of arguing around, again, Second Amendment.
Yeah, it's kind of something that's ingrained within the culture and within the history of the US. That's the thing. It's very important to you guys.
So Suzanne says guns were valued, and you get that price, then you watch them bend the barrel.
Yeah, there was an amnesty, so you were paid very well for handing in your weapons. So, I guess they could try something like that.
Here. I think some places might do that here, but I mean, it's not. My 75-year-old mom wants to get a gun. Well, I don't know where your mom lives.
Sheila.
What'd Sheila say?
Very controversial, I know, but I recently thought Australia, being underpopulated, could house people from the Middle East. Yeah, I don't know if they would be on board with that one.
I think Australia would be like, yeah, no. Just like when I said, all of us Americans are just going to move to the UK. You guys are like, yeah, no. And see, again,
so sorry,
I don't, huh?
Just reading Tina's comment there. So sorry, your brother was murdered. Your mom committed suicide when you were 6, and you're still pro-gun. Well, there you go.
Well, and I was just going to say this. I think other countries that do maybe not have as liberal gun laws as we do, like Canada. Guns are pretty are a thing in Canada. They do a lot of hunting there too. They don't have the problem. I know this sounds horrible, but it's not the gun. It's the intent of the person using the gun. Granted, mass shootings are different. You wouldn't be able to kill 18 people with a knife and probably live through that. You would be taken out, right? But if somebody wants to kill, so taking mass shootings out of the equation, even though that's what this live is about, you can still kill people with knives. You can still do all this other stuff. So it's not the gun; it's the intent of the person.
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, and
It's, I mean,
go ahead.
it's like that cliche, which is actually true. You know, guns don't kill people; people do. Even though guns are designed to kill, it's still people that obviously that are the problem. You know.
Yeah. But going back to the mass shootings, if you take away the automatic weapons, and again, we've talked about this, not all of the mass shootings are done with the automatic weapons, but if you restrict, you know, those caliber type guns, that could, again, like you said, a few seconds makes a difference. You're right, it does.
Yeah, I mean, just think to the guy in Las Vegas, you know, holed up in that sniper's nest, just you know, just splattering a crowd with automatic weapons. Unbelievable. I mean, if you were to restrict possession of semi-automatics, of course, people that are that determined are still going to get them. You know. Yeah, Sarah, it's a people problem, for sure.
Jenny, wow. Jenny says, my uncle was shot driving home from work one night, survived, but had a bullet lodged in his chest by his heart till he died. That was a crazy time. They never caught the shooter. My sister had that. She was driving, and I don't think it was actually a gun. I think it was a BB gun, but she was driving on the highway out to the valley one time, and all of a sudden, her back window just shattered. We think it was a BB gun because it was. I'm not an expert. It could have been a smaller caliber gun, but the back window shattered, but the front window just had a hole in it, and it looked like a little BB gun hole. So, just so you know, BB guns can kill too.
Yeah, and just to go back to the earlier conversation, and this applies more to the trend of school shootings, I guess. Like this instance with this guy seems more of a kind of mental health than a personal problem. But in terms of the trend of school shootings and all that, I do wonder if it's a deep problem in terms of how kids are being brought up across the board and what they like. Are we pampering our kids? You know, is society pampering our kids to where they grow up with this belief that there's something special, and when obviously things don't turn out quite like that, it can be pretty difficult getting to where you need to get to in life. We all know that. I mean, there's clearly a trend of these young people feeling completely detached from their peer groups and from society. That's why they take it that far, you know, to just literally burn down the world and go out in a blaze of glory because they detest the world that they're in.
So when you asked me that, you know, when Tracy, we were talking about that, there's also another part to it that I didn't bring up, but it is true. Things are different. Again, when we did earthquake drills and fire drills, kids now have to do active shooter drills. You know, it's just that things are different now, and I agree because you and I've talked about this. I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, but on the other hand, maybe there is more mental health issues because the world is an uglier place, and that's just my opinion.
Both are kind of true. There are definitely more genuine mental health issues, right? That are out of control of the people that are suffering it. I think that is probably on the increase. But I think you've got this other problem going on along beside it, which really muddies the waters and makes it such a complicated issue. Because I do think there's an over-reliance upon just the phrase of mental health. You know, I think it
Right.
I think it sometimes it can exacerbate problems within people, you know. I really feel that. But it's such a difficult topic to talk about for obvious reasons.
I agree. I just want to say really quick, Stacy says the guy in Vegas used something called a bump stock on his gun, which altered it to make it function like an automatic weapon. I don't. Is that something that you can buy legally? Stacy, do you know? Because if that's the case, why? Why is something like that legal?
Would that not be something he did himself?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that is. Yes, Sarah. Yes. Nuclear war. Oh my gosh, yes. Any given day, the Russians are going to send nukes to us. Yes, I remember that. That was a real fear, for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Sheila, good question. Should we know this? We should know this. Rabid, you have to know this.
okay.
Has there ever been a female mass?
That's a great question. I cannot think of any.
Google that. You Google so
I'm not sure
quickly.
there ever has been.
I don't know. What's that tell you then, huh? Just saying. So
Right.
Stacy says, my husband says you used to be able to, but he thinks they banned them. So they just banned them after Vegas? Again, I don't understand what the purpose, other than, oh, look how cool this is. I mean, other than that, what would be the functional purpose of that?
Well, it's funny you should say that because there was something that annoyed me on the back of this current mass shooting. There was a congressman that was speaking, Congressman Goldman, who was against any bans on assault rifles, and he is local to the area. And on the back of this mass shooting, he came out with a public statement speaking to the media, saying that he's now changing his mind about opposing a ban on assault rifle type weapons. And I'm thinking, I'm not that impressed by that. I mean, if that is a kind of issue that you should already have completely decided for yourself, you know, as a politician, that should not be affected by the fact that something happens locally or not. Was it? So it's only
Right, but
you're only
that's kind of
affected
how,
because it's nearby.
yeah, but if you think about it, that's kind of how humans are in general. Not everybody, obviously, but in general, until something actually affects them,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, you know, they have their opinions until they have to live with it, you know. I think that
We
I don't
expect
agree with
politicians to rise above that, though, right?
Yeah, you would expect, because, you know, as a politician, it's not about you and your beliefs. It's about, you know, your constituents and the people that you represent and what's best for them. And clearly this guy wasn't thinking that way. Well, that's my opinion, but it usually
it's so
takes, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of times it usually takes somebody to experience something for themselves, for them to realize, oh, now I get what you were talking about. Now I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
And now I agree with you. I didn't know that until I went through it, that kind of a thing.
As you can see, Rachel beat me to it. Yeah, women only participate in 2% of mass shootings in the US. Yeah, I'm not surprised at that.
2%?
2%, yeah.
Well, maybe we should just not let men have guns. Just saying. Just saying. That's a whole different discussion, right?
Yeah. I'm getting images of Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes. Okay, Suzanne says, let's put this to bed. If anyone wants to know about conspiracy theories on Port Arthur, kindly Google it. Leave it out of chat. As touchy as that little prick is, the reason I lost guns. Got you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. I do want to read about that though. I am gonna look that up. Not that I would love to think that as a country we can get so fed up that, you know, I remember they used to tell us towards the end of graduating high school that someday everybody's gonna be touched by suicide at one point or another, right? And it was like, what? And honestly, now that it's been a minute since I graduated, that kind of seems true. I remember because there was one of our friends that committed suicide in high school, and through most of my 20s, I didn't meet new people. There weren't a whole lot of people that knew anybody that had committed suicide. Now it's very hard to find people that haven't known someone that knows someone. So maybe, I'm not saying we need to get to that point, but maybe there'll be enough mass shootings to where as a country we can say enough is enough, you know, for the greater good. Changes need to be made. You know, I don't know what happened in Port Arthur.
You hear that? You hear that language after every shooting, though, don't you? Like, this is it.
You do.
Something has to be done, but there's no answer, it seems, or no answer that's acceptable to enough people. Because we all know, right, that what just happened here is going to be forgotten about very quickly. It's horrible to think like that, but it's true. This is the 36th shooting this year. That's like 4 mass shootings a month.
Yeah, that's. Sorry, go ahead.
As I was going to say, as you have heard, it's not an easy conversation to have because it's such a difficult one. There is no easy solution.
Well, another thing I was thinking of, I'm going to go on mute. I'll be right back. Remind me to tell you what I was thinking of in just a second.
Okay. Right, Sheila? I mean, I don't think it's as surprising, obviously, to Americans, right? But to me, as an outsider, I was blown away by that.
So I remember when they started doing the DNA stuff. So many people like, I'm never giving the government my DNA, blah, 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 blah. And that was a thing for a while because they had a right. That's their personal stuff, right? Times have changed now. So when you go to jail, I don't know if it's for every state. I'm pretty sure it's definitely for federal. If you're in there for a felony, they take your DNA. You don't have that. You don't have that quote unquote, and I'm using air quote, right anymore. Your right to not giving a sample of your DNA was taken away. And even in lesser cases, it can be court ordered. So your right, quote unquote, is taken away. So we have made change, and that's helped a lot with, we all know that, they're finding murderers from 30 years ago because of DNA. So that was a quote unquote right that we had that the government changed. So, I mean, it is possible that, certain things can be changed. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Just, and everybody has their own feelings about it, but just, tonight. And it was the other day too, I have a grandson, and, every time something like this happens, well, I mean, she talks about it. It doesn't take this for my daughter to worry about everything in the world as a new parent. But,
natural, right?
This stuff just kills her. Cause she's like, her first thought, and this is what she says, I don't want to homeschool him because I want him to have, friends and activities but and she said, unless something changes, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, he's not that far from school. We're not talking about 20 years from now. We're talking about 2 years from now. So, and I said, whatever changes you think is going to happen that may influence your decision is not going to happen in the next 2 years. So, it's a discussion that her and I have had, but there's no answers to that either. And I don't know what to say, because as a parent, I didn't worry about that. I didn't have to worry about that. I remember when my oldest, when he was in elementary school, and this was before cell phones and all that, we went to pick them up. And that's when we were told that the school went on a lockdown because there was a guy running around the playground with a knife. That was scary. I mean, that was terrorizing. Right. And they even said, hey, if you don't want to send your kid to school tomorrow, because there were a lot of parents that were really uneasy about that. They didn't have to, but we didn't even know about it till the end of the school day. That was horrible. I can't even imagine as a parent what they have to deal with. Again, you drop your kid off for school, and even if nothing happens, just the fact, and I think you showed a video, you sent a link, or I sent, we watched a video where these kids they're doing their lockdowns, an active shooter. And it's just, it reminds me, it kind of looked like to me, like how we acted when we had to do an earthquake drill. It's like, come on. Or even a fire drill. You're like, well, fire drills weren't too bad unless it was wintertime because you got to get out of class. But it's like, come on, seriously, do we need to do this? That's how kids are feeling, because it's just part of their life.
That's the scary thing. It's losing its shock impact, isn't it? Because it's like, just, this is what happens, right? There's a school shooting or a mass shooting every few weeks. And that's, when people become complacent about that, and it's just part of existence, that's kind of scary.
I mean, we haven't had any. I think we had a shooting. I think it was in Bethel, and I think it was in the late 80s. A kid killed a teacher and another. I can't remember. It's been a while, but we haven't had things like that here. Knock on wood. But because I do get the text from our police and our fire, at least a couple times a school year. We'll get a text that, this high school or this middle school, that's what's elementary school. Thank God it's not the elementary schools that often. It's mostly the high schools that they're on lockdown but this goes back to what Tracy was saying, because another student reported that a student had a gun or said they had a gun or something. So the kids are getting really good about, exactly what Tracy was saying. Keep a check on the people around you. Keep a check on your friends. Thank goodness the last one we had that we got a notification about, it turned out that the person didn't have a gun. It was just, he told some people that he had a gun. And so they went into lockdown and and he didn't have one, which was good. But I just think it's sad that a kid would have to go into their, to their school security and say, hey, so Joey said he has a gun. He's going to shoot everybody. Like, that's blows my mind that that's a thing. I saw Jenny Joe. What did she say? This is why I was so glad my son's preschool was connected to a police station. Shouldn't they all be That would be so nice. I mean, I do know up here, I don't know about every state, but I know up here, I can't even say up here. I'll just say in Anchorage, because I don't know where everywhere else. But all schools up here have police officers in them. I think they call them school resource monitors or something. But they're basically, so they're more than just security guards. They're actually police officers. That's their assignment. Instead of traffic or whatever, they're assigned to schools. Even that's sad, but I mean, I think that's a little more reassuring.
So that's got a fair amount of votes there on that poll.
So what was
it? It just proves the point, right? So 54% yes, 45% no. So essentially 50-50.
Yeah.
That just underlines the problem. Hey, Laura.
Even though his school was attached to the police station, after Sandy Hook, I sat outside in the hallway for weeks before my anxiety calmed down enough for me to go back home while he was at right.
Yeah, see all the stuff that I see Bubsy talking about, the the annoyance of certain conspiracy theories. I mean, none more so than the Sandy Hook stuff, you know, Alex Jones and all that kind of
Oh yeah,
nonsense. And
that
he obviously, as we all know, he got held accountable in the end for that. It's destroyed him financially. It's just crazy.
Yeah, he wasn't taken. I don't think anybody is surprised that that guy, sorry, what's his name? Card? That he killed himself. That seems
Robert
to be the
Card.
yeah.
Yeah. Credit to Bam. I know a few people were saying that earlier. Bam called that yesterday. She was saying he'll be dead. He'll be lying dead somewhere. She was right.
They usually
I was starting to think he was away on his boat, you know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, to a certain extent, maybe he died with a lot of answers, but on the other hand, maybe he didn't. I mean, it does seem to be even the ones that kill themselves after these mass shootings, they're able to figure out, you know, what their motive was, even if it doesn't actually make a lot of sense to us, because a lot of us don't have the same mental problems they had. But yeah, I mean, save us the trial. We just watched the trial of that one kid, and again, so bad that I don't remember which school it was.
Oh, Parkland?
Yeah, I was at Parkland. Yeah, and it was a shit show trial, and just saves, you know, us, the citizens, the state, save the government, save everybody a whole lot of just. But on the other hand, you know, I saw somebody say, you know, he took the chicken shit way out. Well, you know,
If he should have done that before.
Right.
If only he'd done that before.
That's the thing. That's the thing that I think would be worth asking. But again, you could probably ask 10 mass shooters and you would get 10 separate answers as to why you felt the need to kill a bunch of people before you tried to kill yourself, or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, I don't
I'm convinced he chose those targets for a reason.
Who, the guy tonight or the person guy?
The guy tonight.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there was something about Parkland. I feel so horrible because I should remember this stuff. I just remember that one really, not that they all don't affect you, but there's just Uvalde. I hope I'm saying that right, Uvalde. There's just certain ones that just, for whatever reason, whether it's a picture of one of the victims or something that sometimes just catches you. And Jenny, same thing. Like Parkland was just, there was something about that really bothered me for a very long time.
Was Uvalde the one where they took forever to actually get inside and actually take him out? Yeah.
Yep. That's the one in Texas. But even before we knew all that, there was just something about that one. I don't even know what. And again, not that they're all not devastating. And, you know, when I just watched that little clip earlier where they were talking about certain victims, I was watching one, and, you know, you can't help but just, you know, and then the rage kicks in. And then, of course, then the talk. There needs to be change. And then nothing ever happens.
Uvalde,
right. See, I hate saying that stuff because I feel like it's really disrespectful when I can't remember the names or mispronounce something. It just feels very disrespectful. So thank you.
Laura, you talking about Parkland? Yeah. Yeah, he has a lot of issues, that kid.
The green Converses, yes. With the didn't she have like the little hearts drawn on him?
Yeah, and that goes towards the points that Tracy was making earlier, calming the chaos. A lot of things slip through through the net because people around others don't step in, I guess, you know?
The one thing, damn it. I know I say this every time, but it really is true. What shooting was I just reading an article about? Where the parents, they're going to hold the parents responsible. That they can be, they fought it, and it turned out that no, the court said that they can be held liable because they knew he had mental issues. He talked about the school, I guess, had been called. Oh, it was a video I just watched. It was, I was listening to it yesterday at work.
Was this from a recent one, was it? From a recent shooting? Or was it not a shooting, it was prevented, but the parents were getting held accountable for it?
No,
right?
I'll have to go back and look. It was either on that, because I was listening to two of them. There's Coffee House Crime and there's that chapter. I was listening to those yesterday. So I think it was on Coffee House Crime where they said that the parents were, the court deemed that they knew enough about his mental health issues. The school had warned them several times about drawings and things he'd been saying, and they did nothing about it. They were basically non-existent in this kid's life, and they gave him no parental guidance, and they just kind of blew it off. And I have to go look. I can't remember. It wasn't a shooting that I think I remember hearing about. But the parents are
Ethan Crumbler.
Huh?
Is it Ethan Crumbler?
I think so, yeah, because the name's not standing out to me, but the parents bought him the gun for his birthday, but his parents were never around, and the school, he had drawn guns and stuff like that, and they had called, and
I'm glad you're here, Tracy. Do you want to pop back up and talk about this? Because I know that you were covering this particular case. I thought it was the same one.
I'm gonna go look and see if that's him. Because I will know him if I see him. Yes, that's him. Yes.
Did he actually shoot anyone, though? Was it not just that he got
No, he was a school shooter.
Okay, all right, okay. I'm getting mixed up with another one then. But yeah, I remember Tracy telling me about a case like this. So it was obviously that one.
He killed 4 people in Michigan. Killed four in Michigan. Yes, that's him.
Okay, Tracy, do you want to tell us what you know about this? This is the one you were telling me about, I think.
Yeah, I don't. The picture isn't matching, but so Ethan Crumbley was a 16-year-old, 15-year-old student at a high school in Michigan, and it's in Oakland County. And what he did was he ended up killing 4 people and injuring more. So what makes this an interesting case is that he had pre-existing mental health conditions that his parents ignored. And now the prosecutor in Oakland County is not only prosecuting Ethan Crumbley, who actually pleaded guilty to everything. He said, I'm guilty. And so he's not going to have a trial. His parents have been held in custody probably since December of last year. And they are being held because they bought him a gun on Thanksgiving Day. Or actually, I think it was Black Friday or something like that. They bought him a gun, and he used that gun to murder these 4 of his students. So I think the thing that makes me interested in this case is that, mental health issues were ignored. And so
absolutely.
The parents were like, you don't need, oh gosh, yeah, there he is.
Yeah.
the parents were like, you don't need counseling, you don't need anything. And he kept saying, like, I'm hearing voices, I'm hearing like the devil. And then the mother was spending all this time at her horse farm, and the dad was doing DoorDash. And then Ethan started showing signs of being mentally. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. It's like, be aware.
Yeah.
So there were some killings of birds. There were some texts with his friend that really, now that we're looking in hindsight, were really indicative of him having some really serious mental problems. And so they, as the parents, put a firearm in the hands of this person who they knew had mental stuff and emotional stuff going on. So
Can I
now
interrupt real
they've been in
quick?
custody for about a year. You know, I don't know what's going to happen with them, but the prosecutor seems pretty confident that these parents are going to be held accountable for. I mean, he
Yeah.
was a vulnerable person. I mean, why
And
didn't they
he
help
wasn't
him? And why did they put a firearm in his hands? I mean, good God.
And this
Sorry.
wasn't a case of where, a kid's just, introverted and more reserved, because again, all my teens did that too. Of course, I kept an eye on them, but teens go through that phase sometimes. He literally told them he had these problems. He was hearing voices and they ignored him. I mean, it's not like, there are some kids that do these shootings and their parents like, well, yeah, he's been a little more reserved lately, but that's what teenagers, they really didn't recognize the signs because the kids hid them well. This kid didn't. And somebody brought it up in chat that reminded me, when he was looking up ammo at school, and when the teachers called his parents going, hey, look, he's doing this and we're kind of concerned about this, they said the text messages that he had with his mom, and his mom's like, don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong. You just have to learn to not get caught when you do stuff like that, So this kid actually kind of sounded like, at least from the little bit that I heard on the video, was that in a way, he was actually looking to his parents for help with his mental health, saying, look, there was a story about how, he was hearing these voices and he was really scared one night and something. And he texted his mom going, please answer me. I'm scared. And his mom, they saw that his mom started texting his dad like, hey, look, he's at it again, blah, blah. But she never replied to him. As a mom, just going, it's okay, you're fine. Nothing. He got nothing. So not that I'm feeling sorry for this kid. I'm not feeling sorry for the kid that killed 4 people, but I am feeling sorry for this young teenager who really was trying to reach out to his parents, it sounds like, because he didn't feel right. He wanted help.
Yeah, and then there was of course, the other dimension of the fact that he was seen researching ammo, but then on the day of, not on the day, but the day before, he was actually caught. I think it was on the day of or the day before. He was supposed to be taking a math test, and he was drawing all these suicidal and homicidal drawings, and his teacher got a hold of that and said, hey, you need to meet with the counselor, like, get out of here. And the teacher and the counselors, they called the parents, and they had this whole big old conference. I think it was the day before the shootings happened. And I think it was the same day, actually, which makes it all the more tragic. Yeah, that's what it was. It was the day of. And they said, well, so why are you drawing these drawings? And the mom and the dad were there, and they said, hey, listen, the counselor said, hey, listen, you need to go to counseling right away. And they said, the parents said, okay, we'll do that. but they let him go back to school, and they didn't search his backpack, and he had his Sig Sauer in his backpack. So what they did is they let him go back to school, and when they did, he went into the bathroom and he did all the shooting. I mean,
God.
why didn't they search his backpack is what I keep coming back to. It's like, I mean, mental health people, like, do your fucking jobs. Like,
Mm.
I'm sorry. And now, you know, I mean, I feel kind of bad for the mental health people that were, the school counselors and stuff like that, because they were probably doing what they needed to do. But why did they not, if they knew that he was searching for ammo, and like, do you have a gun in your backpack would have been a great question to ask, right?
Mm.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little
Right.
bit venomous here.
No, you're fine. This is exactly the type of example. This is like a worst case scenario, isn't it? That fits into what you're basically worried about. You know, this kid, his issues were being advertised to his own parents, and they should be held
Right.
accountable for that
So
in some way, right?
going back to how things have changed. So that's another thing that changed. When I was in high school, the only people that were allowed to search, not in my school, because I went to a very small school, but I did go to a school in Washington for a year, and it was what I considered the big school. And I remember that they did locker searches there, which was totally foreign to me, but I think they were actually probably looking for drugs, not guns. But at that time, the only people that could do them were police officers. The school couldn't do it, but those days have changed now. The schools can do those searches now. So I know that's kind of off the subject of, but it just goes back to, since they have that ability, and again, I don't know. I think the schools are trying their best, but there's only so much they could do. Again, the mental health professional obviously deemed him not a danger or something to that effect, to where he was allowed to go back to school, right?
Right. Yeah, even though the mental health professional, or there was the principal and the mental health professional, Ethan and his two parents, and they were talking about, the drawings and what he did on his math test, which was completely inappropriate. I think Rabid might be able to even bring that up. I mean, because there was these graphic drawings that he made. So when that happened, they didn't even search his backpack, and they didn't even do a safety check of anything that he had done. Well, it turns out he had a Sig Sauer in the backpack, and when he went and they did the shootings, his dad heard about it on the radio, and that's when his dad called it in and said, "Hey, I think that's my son." And then the two, mom and dad, after the whole thing went down, they tried to run away. They actually were found hiding in a warehouse in Michigan, like right near the border
No
with
way.
Canada,
Oh my
and so,
God.
yeah, they actually were found because they were just like, shit, probably like, this is not going to bode well for us. And so they actually were hidden in a warehouse. And what they were planning to do, allegedly, was to cross the border into Canada, where they couldn't be prosecuted. But somebody, by the grace of God, actually found their rig. I think it was some sort of an SUV that they found, and they reported it in, and the cops came in, busted them, and now they are still in custody because the prosecutor in Oakland County is really pretty much not letting go of this. And if they would have been able to be released, they would have been released by now, but they haven't been. Even though the attorneys for, oh my gosh, this is another shit show right there. Which is going to be interesting when they go to trial, is that the attorneys for the parents are at the same law firm. There's the blonde and the brunette, and the blonde is for the dad and the brunette is for the mom, and they are both in there trying to defend these two. And it's one case, but there's two different lawyers from the same law firm, and so there was all this stuff that had to be sorted out, and as far as like letting that be okay to do.
Yeah.
So anyway. I do. I'm a kind of a geek, and my mother-in-law is so great. Oh my gosh, she always gives me updates. She'll text me some updates. Today is actually her birthday, so I should probably text her happy birthday. But
Yes,
she
you
always
should.
says, crumbly update, because she's in Michigan. She's in Clinton Township, which isn't far from Oakland County, so it's pretty close to home, actually.
I wonder if the mom and dad are going to get to the point where they blame each other. It's not my fault, it's her fault. It's not my fault, it's his fault. He's that kind of a thing.
But can they testify
Yeah.
against each other? I thought that was not allowed. Like you can't do that because you're
I think
married.
some states you can. It depends on the crime and things like that. I don't know. But they can still try to blame each other without testifying against each other,
And the other thing is that it was found that the mother was having an affair. And so that kind of juicy stuff came out when they were looking at the evidence.
The dad's
mother-
definitely going to blame them. Well, I saw the text. I don't know what the dad's involvement. Again, it was either on that chapter or Coffee House Crime. So it was like, a 30-minute synopsis. But they specifically talked about the mom's text where it's like, you didn't do anything wrong. Just you need to get better at not getting caught or something like that. So yeah, they're probably going to blame each other. That's going to be fun.
Yeah, well, I will look forward to hearing about that. But yeah, this crumbly thing, it brings about a bunch of things. It's like, okay, so what happens when parents ignore potential psychological issues in their kids? So that goes back to what I was saying before. Is like, be aware of your community. Well, yeah, parents, be aware of your kids. Be aware of yourselves, and have those conversations and say, hey, is there anything I can do to help? Because you don't want this stuff to happen, or maybe you do. I don't know. Like sometimes I think that people want chaos to happen, or people want these things to happen. But I think in general, we want a calm society, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think especially when you're dealing with a child that clearly has serious mental health issues. He's hearing voices. Some parents just don't want to be bothered because now you have to take them to the doctor's appointments. And then first off, you have to, face the fact that your child, and I don't mean this in a negative way, it's just how I phrase things. Your child's broken, and people don't want to think that their children are broken. They just want the perfect kid, that there's nothing wrong. And they just don't want to deal with it. I don't think to the extent that like teachers or doctors, the duty to report. Mental health professionals to a certain degree have that same thing, a duty to report. But in cases like this, yes. And it looks like, these parents are going to be held accountable. They should be, because it wasn't because the school, dropped the ball that day. But, from what I heard, they had contacted the parents multiple times about his behavior. So they were doing what they could, right? Yeah. And I think that's the thing. If you're going to ignore obvious warning signs that are being brought to your attention and do nothing, now it would be different if they had taken him. Like, okay, I don't know what's wrong with you. You keep doing this stuff, and take him to counseling and he still does it. Then, obviously that's something else, but we don't know if they had done the right thing, done what you're supposed to do as a parent. If they'd done that for him, would the outcome have been the same? We don't know. I mean, we can think that probably not.
Well, at least we need to go on record as trying, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying is that we need to at least try, and then we can go on record as saying this. We did our due diligence in trying to get this person the support and the help that they need, and apparently it didn't work. But where the system fails is where we fail as people to at least talk to that person and interact with that person. I think, we're sometimes really afraid to interact with each other personally and interpersonally. And so let's not be afraid, and let's do what we need to do for everybody. If we feel that a person needs help, I don't know. I use my intuition, So
Yeah.
if I think that somebody in my world is needing help, I just reach out to them. And if it's wrong, then fine. I don't look like an idiot, but I just look like I'm somebody who cares about somebody. So please just do that, if anything. But yes, Rabid, if you want to follow this case when it goes, and then there's this other stuff about Sarah Boone we talked about. I'm very interested in that. Like these cases, continue to follow them, and I will love to hear your commentary. I
definitely.
love what you do. And your sidekick Cheryl, who's a great friend too. I'm gonna go ahead and get off again.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you.
Before you go, Tracy, are you interested in the Delphi case?
Oh, well, you know what? There's a lot of weird legal things going on with that. And yeah, I mean,
Right.
I'm interested in it, of course, because they've got somebody in custody right now. Richard Allen, I think is his name. And I think that there's some interesting stuff going on with that.
For sure.
Not as well researched with that, but I'm interested. I'm interested in what you cover. And you know what? For me, it's not what you cover, but who covers it and how they do it. And so your style is good for me, and I like other people's style too. Yeah, it's really the style of
Rabid does awesome.
Yeah.
Doing true crime. I love his true crime.
I do too. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, take care, and I'll.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
So, Rabid, read the comment on the screen there.
Laura says, Rabid, a family member of mine had made a threat to a family about blowing up a school, and I reported the threat. I spoke to detectives. People need to report these types of threats. Absolutely. Yeah. And you guys would have seen the drawings that I was showing on the screen there. Did you see them, Cheryl? What this Ethan Crumbley was drawing on his exam papers.
I did.
Yeah, so talking about true crime.
I was just gonna say maybe that's another piece to the puzzle of helping with this stuff, that if people know that if they willingly ignore signs, no matter, I mean, obviously these people, the parents didn't take him seriously, but shame on them, right? So if you're going to ignore these things and something does happen, you can be held accountable. Just like a lot of states have laws now to where if a child gets a hold of your gun and accidentally kills themselves or somebody else, you're going to be held liable because you did not put the gun in a safe place. So maybe that's another piece of trying to minimize how many of these are going on.
Well, there's all these different issues that interlace and weave around each other, a lot of issues that we've spoken about, they're all a part of this. It's why it's so complicated. It's not one single thread, But yeah, on the topic of true crime, I'm going to be covering Delphi next, I think. I'm kind of down the rabbit hole on that one. So I'll be looking forward to covering that soon. But I think that's all we have for tonight, guys. So thanks everyone for joining us. And thanks as usual, Cheryl.
Oh, you're welcome. I don't feel like
I
added a bunch of ambiguity, like, oh, I don't know.
It's an ambiguous issue. It's not a all or nothing type thing, really.
Yeah, but thank you for having this because it was a good discussion, and thank you for everybody in the chat, and Tracy too for coming up.
Yeah, thanks again, Tracy, and thanks everyone in chat. We shall see you again soon. Delphi next time. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, everyone. Take care.
Good night.